Paradoxically, the impossible may be the only witness left. What if reality has hidden echoes that whisper from unsolved ages of human existence? In 3 hours, these eerie enigmas will fracture ordinary perception with revelations so unsettling that your mind may question every boundary between myth and truth waiting ahead. Beneath the streets of Paris, far below the rhythm of modern life, lies a vast underground world carved from darkness and silence. The catacombs stretch through miles of former limestone quarries, where carefully arranged walls of human bones create one of the most haunting historical sites in Europe. Behind the stone corridors and dim passageways is a story shaped by necessity, memory, and the uneasy relationship between the living and the dead. During the late 18th century, Paris faced a growing crisis. The city's cemeteries had become overcrowded, and conditions at places such as the Cemetery of the Innocents raised serious concerns about public health. In response, authorities began transferring human remains into abandoned quarry tunnels beneath the capital. Beginning in 1786, bones from Parisian cemeteries were moved underground, transforming forgotten excavation sites into a vast underground ossuary. The work was not simply a matter of relocation. Over time, the bones were arranged into patterns, with skulls and long bones forming deliberate designs along the tunnel walls. Behind these formations was a message about mortality and the passage of time. The catacombs became more than a storage place. They became a monument reflecting the beliefs, fears, and customs of a society confronting death on an enormous scale. Yet, beyond the historical record, the underground passages have continued to inspire questions. The official explanation is clear. The catacombs exist because Paris needed a solution to its overcrowded burial grounds. But the atmosphere of the tunnels, combined with their immense size and hidden corners, has encouraged countless stories about what may exist beyond the known routes. Some explorers and writers have wondered about sealed chambers, forgotten sections, or areas that remain difficult to access. While many claims are based on speculation rather than confirmed discoveries, the possibility of unexplored spaces beneath a major city naturally captures the imagination. How much of this underground network has truly been documented? Are there passages that disappeared from public records, or are the remaining mysteries simply the result of a place too vast to fully understand? The catacombs have also attracted stories of unusual encounters. Visitors have reported feelings of disorientation, unusual sounds, or an overwhelming sense of presence within the tunnels. Such experiences can often be connected to the environment itself, the absence of natural light, the silence of enclosed spaces, and the knowledge that thousands of lives surround every step. Yet, these personal accounts continue to add another layer to the fascination surrounding the site. Throughout history, the catacombs have served many purposes beyond their original role as an ossuary. During times of conflict, the tunnels became part of the hidden landscape of Paris, offering shelter and secrecy to those who knew how to navigate them. Their concealed nature has allowed them to exist as both a historical archive and a place where imagination fills the gaps left by incomplete knowledge. Today, only a small portion of the underground network is open to visitors, while much of the system remains restricted. The limestone corridors continue beneath the city, carrying traces of centuries that have passed above them. The bones, the forgotten pathways, and the unanswered questions all remain part of the same underground story. Perhaps the greatest mystery of the catacombs is not what is hidden within their walls, but what they reveal about humanity itself, the ways we remember, bury, preserve, and search for meaning among the remains of the past. Beneath Paris, the silence continues, holding stories that may be fully understood someday, or may remain waiting in the darkness. Leaving behind the silent chambers beneath Paris, our journey now moves toward another place where stone, power, and mystery are deeply intertwined. Rising from the rugged landscape near the Judean desert, the massive shape of Herodium stands as a monument that has challenged archaeologists for generations. At first glance, it appears to be a mountain shaped by nature itself, but beneath its slopes lies one of the most ambitious architectural achievements of the ancient world. Built in the late 1st century BC by Herod the Great, Herodium was more than a palace. It was a fortress, a royal residence, a symbol of authority, and eventually a place connected to the memory of one of the most controversial rulers of the ancient era. Located approximately 12 kilometers south of Jerusalem, the site was carefully positioned on an artificial hill, allowing it to dominate the surrounding landscape. Its circular upper structure, towering walls, and carefully engineered systems reveal a level of planning that continues to impress modern researchers. Inside this enormous complex were luxurious halls, gardens, bathhouses, theaters, and underground passages. Water channels carried supplies from distant sources, while massive construction techniques transformed a barren hill into a royal retreat. The scale of the project raises an important question. What drove a ruler to reshape an entire landscape simply to create a monument that would outlast his own lifetime? Historical sources describe Herod as a powerful leader known for remarkable building projects, including the expansion of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Yet his reign was also marked by political uncertainty and intense struggles for control. Herodium appears to reflect both sides of his character, a display of extraordinary vision and a structure designed for protection against possible threats. For centuries, the exact purpose of certain areas within Herodium remained uncertain. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence suggesting that the site served religious, political, and ceremonial functions, but some parts of the complex still leave room for interpretation. The discovery of a grand tomb structure in 2007 was widely believed by researchers to be Herod's final resting place, although questions about its destruction and the missing remains continue to generate discussion. The underground world beneath Herodium adds another layer of intrigue. Hidden tunnels, cisterns, and passages reveal a sophisticated understanding of engineering and survival. During later periods, some of these tunnels were adapted for different purposes, including use during revolts against Roman rule. Their existence shows that the site was not simply a palace frozen in time, but a place that continued to evolve long after its original builders were gone. Some theories have suggested that Herodium may contain undiscovered chambers or concealed spaces that could reveal more about the people who lived and worked there. While such possibilities remain unconfirmed, the complexity of the site leaves many questions open. How much of Herod's vision has already been uncovered, and how much remains buried beneath layers of earth and history? The mystery of Herodium is not only found in its architecture, but also in the intentions behind it. Was it built primarily as a statement of power, a monument to personal legacy, or a carefully planned refuge against an uncertain future? As researchers continue examining its walls, tunnels, and forgotten corners, Herodium remains a place where history provides answers, but where the stones themselves still seem to hold secrets waiting to be revealed. Beyond the monumental heights of Herodium, our journey continues deeper into the distant echoes of human beginnings. Far from the grand palaces of ancient rulers, we now arrive at a structure that emerged from a much earlier chapter of civilization, a time when humans were only beginning to experiment with permanent settlements, agriculture, and organized communities. Rising from the ancient landscape of Jericho is one of the oldest known monumental structures ever built, the Jericho Tower. Standing at the center of the ancient settlement of Tel es-Sultan, near modern-day Jericho in the West Bank, the tower reaches nearly 9 meters high and is connected to a massive stone wall constructed around the settlement. Dating back to approximately 8000 BC, It predates the Egyptian pyramids by thousands of years and belongs to the Neolithic period, a transformative era when human societies were changing from mobile hunter-gatherer groups into more settled communities. At first glance, the tower appears to be a simple defensive structure, a stone monument created to protect the people living nearby. For much of the 20th century, archaeologists interpreted it as part of an early fortification system, a response to the challenges faced by one of the world's first permanent settlements. The surrounding walls seem to suggest protection, perhaps against rival groups or natural threats. But as researchers examined the structure more closely, another possibility began to emerge. The tower's design raises questions that reach beyond its physical purpose. Its construction required enormous effort, coordination, and a level of organization that challenges traditional assumptions about early human societies. Thousands of stones had to be gathered, transported, and carefully arranged by people who had no metal tools, no written language, and no large-scale political institutions, as we would recognize them today. Why would a community invest such energy into building a towering stone structure at a time when survival itself demanded constant attention? Was it truly a defensive creation, or did it serve a deeper social or symbolic role? Some researchers have suggested that the tower may have been connected to early religious practices, community gatherings, or rituals linked to the cycles of life and the changing seasons. Its impressive height would have made it a dominant feature of the landscape, visible from a distance and capable of creating a shared sense of identity among the people who lived there. One intriguing interpretation proposes that the tower may have represented a collective response to the challenges of a changing world. As communities became more settled, new social pressures emerged. People had to cooperate in unfamiliar ways, manage resources, and establish connections between individuals and groups. A monumental structure like this may have served as a physical reminder of unity and shared purpose. Yet many questions remain unanswered. The original builders left behind no written records explaining their intentions. Unlike later civilizations that documented their beliefs through inscriptions and texts, the people of Neolithic Jericho communicated through architecture, tools, and objects left buried beneath the ground. The tower itself becomes the message, but interpreting that message is far more difficult. The location of the tower also adds to its significance. Jericho is among the oldest continuously inhabited settlements known to archaeologists, with evidence of human activity stretching back thousands of years. The settlement existed at a crucial moment in human history, when communities were experimenting with new ways of living. The tower stands as a marker of this transition, a reminder that complex human organization appeared much earlier than many once believed. Some more speculative ideas have emerged around the tower's purpose. A few have wondered whether it held astronomical or ceremonial significance, perhaps connected to observations of the sky or ancient beliefs about the relationship between humans and the natural world. These interpretations remain debated, and there is limited evidence to confirm them. Still, the possibility reflects a larger mystery. Ancient monuments often carried meanings that may not fit neatly into modern categories. Was the tower built for protection? Was it a symbol of authority? Was it a place where communities gathered to express beliefs that have now disappeared from human memory? Or was it something entirely different, something whose true purpose has been hidden by the passage of more than 10,000 years? The discovery of the Jericho Tower forces archaeologists to reconsider the capabilities and motivations of early human societies. It reveals a world where people were already capable of remarkable cooperation, planning, and imagination long before the rise of famous ancient civilizations. Leaving behind the ancient stones of Jericho, our exploration now moves across continents and centuries, toward another discovery that has raised questions about the movement of people, ideas, and objects across the ancient world. In the highlands of central Mexico, among the remains of the ancient settlement of Calixtlahuaca, archaeologists uncovered a small artifact that would become the center of one of the most debated archaeological mysteries of the modern era, the Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head. Carved from a gray stone and measuring only a few centimeters in height, the small head depicts a human figure with distinctive facial features and a style unlike many objects traditionally associated with the region. At first glance, it appears to be an ordinary artifact from a distant past. Yet its unusual appearance, combined with questions about its origin, transformed this tiny object into a subject of international discussion. The artifact was discovered in the early 20th century during excavations at the archaeological site of Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca, located near the modern city of Toluca in Mexico. The area was once an important settlement of the Matlatzinca culture, a civilization that flourished in central Mexico before and during the rise of the Aztec Empire. Excavations revealed temples, sculptures, and other objects connected to Mesoamerican traditions. The head, however, seemed different. Its facial design and clothing details appeared unfamiliar compared with many known Mesoamerican artistic traditions. Some researchers noted that the figure seemed to display features resembling ancient Roman or European styles, including a possible beard and a type of head covering that looked unusual for the region. These observations immediately raised a fascinating possibility. Could this object suggest contact between the ancient Mediterranean world and the Americas long before European exploration? The mainstream archaeological explanation is far more cautious. Many scholars have suggested that the artifact may not be ancient at all, but instead could be a later object that entered the site through historical activity after the original construction period. One possibility is that it was introduced during the colonial era, when European objects and materials were brought into the Americas following the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century. This interpretation is supported by studies that have questioned the object's context and dating. Unlike artifacts discovered in sealed archaeological layers with clear connections to ancient settlements, the circumstances surrounding the head's discovery have been debated. Without a secure archaeological context, determining its true age and origin becomes extremely difficult. But the mystery did not disappear. Some researchers and alternative history enthusiasts have proposed another possibility, that the head may represent evidence of ancient transoceanic contact. According to this interpretation, sailors or travelers from the Mediterranean world could have reached the Americas centuries before Christopher Columbus. If such a journey occurred, it would challenge traditional understandings of ancient navigation and cultural exchange. However, no widespread archaeological evidence currently confirms such a connection. Ancient societies around the world were capable of remarkable voyages and discoveries, but proving direct contact requires more than a single unusual object. Researchers look for patterns, shared technologies, genetic evidence, writing systems, or multiple artifacts found in reliable contexts. The Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head remains an isolated and controversial piece of evidence. Still, the artifact continues to attract attention because it represents a larger question about the ancient world. How connected were distant civilizations before modern transportation? How far could ancient travelers truly journey across oceans? And how many encounters between different cultures may have occurred without leaving behind clear traces? The story of the head also reveals something important about archaeology itself. Discoveries do not always provide simple answers. Sometimes, the most intriguing objects are those that create uncertainty, forcing researchers to examine evidence carefully and reconsider assumptions. A small piece of stone can become a doorway into much larger discussions about migration, exploration, and the limits of historical knowledge. From the debated origins of the Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head, our journey now turns toward another object that has captured the imagination of those fascinated by the unexplained. Unlike ancient temples or buried cities, this discovery is not a towering monument or a forgotten ruin. It is a simple tool, an ordinary-looking hammer surrounded by an extraordinary claim. Known today as the London Hammer, this small object has become one of the most discussed artifacts in debates about the relationship between human history and the deep past of the Earth. The story begins in the late 19th century near London, Texas, a small community in the United States. According to accounts from the time, a man named Max Hahn discovered a strange object embedded inside a rock formation while exploring with his family. The object appeared to be a metal hammer sealed within a piece of stone. At first glance, it seemed like a common tool trapped by natural processes, but the circumstances of its discovery quickly raised questions. The hammer consists of a wooden handle connected to a metallic head. The object resembles tools used by relatively recent human societies, and early observations led some people to wonder how such an artifact could have become enclosed within solid rock. The discovery gained attention because certain interpretations suggested that the surrounding stone might be extremely ancient, potentially creating a conflict between the object and traditional timelines of human development. To understand the mystery, researchers first examined the geological context. The rock surrounding the hammer has often been described as a type of concretion, a natural formation created when minerals accumulate around an object over time. Such formations can develop relatively quickly under certain conditions, meaning that the presence of stone around an object does not necessarily indicate that the object is as old as the surrounding geological layers. This explanation has been supported by many researchers who argue that the hammer is likely a 19th century tool that became enclosed within a mineral deposit. According to this interpretation, the object does not represent evidence of humans existing millions of years ago, but rather an unusual example of natural mineral formation around a modern object. Yet, the story continues to attract attention because questions remain among those who study unusual artifacts. Some have pointed to the hammer's appearance, the mineral coating, and the circumstances of its discovery as reasons to consider alternative possibilities. Could the object have a history more complicated than first assumed? Could there be details about its formation that have not been fully understood? These questions have led some to propose much older origins for the artifact, suggesting that it might challenge established ideas about human history. Such claims often appear in discussions about so-called out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem difficult to explain when viewed outside their accepted historical context. However, extraordinary interpretations require strong evidence. Archaeology and geology rely heavily on reliable dating methods, documented excavation conditions, and comparisons with other discoveries. A single, unusual object, especially one without a clearly recorded archaeological context, is difficult to use as proof of a completely different timeline of human existence. Still, the London Hammer remains fascinating because it highlights the complicated relationship between discovery and interpretation. Objects do not always arrive with explanations attached. Their meaning depends on where they are found, how they are studied, and what evidence surrounds them. Without that context, even a simple tool can become the center of a much larger debate. The hammer also raises broader questions about how we understand the past. The history of Earth stretches across immense periods of time, while the story of human civilization occupies only a small fraction of that timeline. Discoveries that appear unusual naturally invite curiosity. They remind us that the ancient world is filled with unanswered questions, and that scientific understanding continues to develop as new evidence emerges. What makes the London Hammer so compelling is not only the object itself, but the mystery surrounding its interpretation. Is it simply a 19th century tool preserved through an unusual geological process? Or does it represent something about the past that has not yet been fully explained? Leaving behind the questions surrounding the London Hammer, our journey now returns to the ancient Mediterranean, where stone itself becomes a record of human ambition, power, and mystery. On a rocky hilltop overlooking the plains of the northeastern Peloponnese in Greece, enormous blocks of limestone rise from the earth in a formation that has fascinated travelers for centuries. These are the Cyclopean walls of Mycenae, a massive defensive structure built by a civilization whose achievements would later inspire legends of heroes, kings, and mythical giants. The ancient city of Mycenae flourished during the Late Bronze Age, reaching its height between approximately 1600 and 1100 BC. It was one of the most powerful centers of the Mycenaean civilization, a culture known for its impressive palaces, warrior traditions, and extensive trade networks across the Aegean world. At the heart of the city stood its legendary fortress, surrounded by walls made from enormous stones carefully fitted together without the use of mortar. Some of these limestone blocks weigh several tons. Their irregular shapes appear almost impossible to move when viewed through the eyes of the modern observer. The sheer size of the construction led later generations to create explanations that blended history with mythology. Ancient Greek writers eventually attributed these walls to the Cyclopes, the one-eyed giants from Greek mythology who were believed to possess extraordinary strength. The name Cyclopean comes from this ancient belief, but archaeologists today understand that the walls were built by human hands. The Mycenaeans were skilled engineers and builders who developed advanced techniques for their time. Through organized labor, careful planning, and knowledge of construction methods, they created a fortress capable of protecting a major political center. The purpose of the walls appears straightforward: defense. Mycenae was a city of rulers and warriors, and its elevated position provided a strategic advantage. The massive fortifications created a powerful barrier against potential attackers, while also demonstrating the authority and wealth of the kingdom within. Yet, the scale of the construction continues to raise questions. How were these enormous stones transported and positioned thousands of years ago? What systems of organization allowed Bronze Age societies to complete projects of such complexity without modern machinery? The answers likely involve a combination of human ingenuity, skilled labor, and long periods of construction, but the exact methods remain difficult to reconstruct. The most famous entrance to the city, the Lion Gate, offers another glimpse into Mycenaean craftsmanship. Built around 1250 BC, the gate features a large triangular stone relief depicting two lions standing on either side of a central column. It is one of the earliest monumental sculptures in Europe and serves as a powerful symbol of Mycenaean identity. Beyond the walls, excavations have revealed royal tombs, storage areas, religious spaces, and evidence of a society deeply connected to both warfare and ceremony. The discoveries at Mycenae helped archaeologists understand that the ancient Mediterranean world was far more complex than previously imagined. However, the mystery surrounding the walls has never completely disappeared. Some alternative interpretations have questioned whether the Mycenaeans truly possessed the knowledge and resources needed to construct such monumental architecture. A few have suggested that earlier unknown cultures may have influenced or contributed to the development of these techniques. These ideas remain debated, as current archaeological evidence attributes the construction to the Mycenaean civilization itself. Still, the fascination with the Cyclopean walls comes from a deeper human curiosity. Ancient structures often seem to stand between two worlds, one explained through evidence and another shaped by imagination. The walls of Mycenae remind us that ancient people were capable of extraordinary achievements, even when their tools and methods were very different from our own. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of these stones is not only their size, but their survival. They have endured earthquakes, wars, changing civilizations, and thousands of years of exposure to the elements. Every block carries traces of the hands that shaped it and the society that depended on it. As researchers continue studying Mycenae and other Bronze Age sites, new discoveries continue to refine our understanding of the past. Yet, the Cyclopean walls remain a silent monument to human creativity and determination. Built by people whose voices have long disappeared, they leave behind a question that still echoes among the ancient stones. How much of the knowledge and ingenuity of forgotten civilizations has been lost, waiting somewhere beneath the layers of history to be uncovered? Leaving behind the massive stones of Mycenae, our journey now moves across the ocean toward a civilization that recorded its knowledge not only in monuments, but in the delicate pages of ancient manuscripts. Deep within the tropical forests of Mesoamerica, the Maya developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems of the ancient world. Their surviving manuscripts, known as the Mayan Codices, offer rare glimpses into astronomy, rituals, mathematics, and the way an advanced civilization understood its place within the universe. Unlike the towering pyramids and temples that still rise above the landscapes of Mexico and Central America, the codices are fragile creations. Made from strips of bark paper coated with a thin layer of lime plaster, these folded books were painted with carefully arranged symbols, images, and calculations. Each page preserved the thoughts of Maya scribes who dedicated their lives to recording information that was considered essential for understanding time, nature, and the forces believed to shape human existence. The Maya civilization flourished for centuries, reaching remarkable achievements in mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and writing. Their calendar systems were among the most precise in the ancient world, and their observations of celestial movements revealed a deep understanding. However, the survival of these manuscripts is itself a story marked by loss. When Spanish forces arrived in the 16th century, many Maya texts were destroyed during campaigns against indigenous religious traditions. One of the most devastating moments occurred in 1562, when the Spanish bishop Diego de Landa ordered the burning of numerous Maya books, in what became one of the greatest losses of indigenous written knowledge in the Americas. Only a small number of original Maya codices survived. Among the most famous are the Dresden Codex, the Madrid Codex, the Paris Codex, and the Grolier Codex. Each contains valuable information, but each also raises questions about what may have been lost forever. The Dresden Codex, for example, contains detailed astronomical tables, including calculations related to lunar cycles and the movement of Venus. These records demonstrate an extraordinary ability to observe and predict celestial events. Yet, the precision of these calculations has often inspired curiosity about how ancient Maya scholars developed such knowledge without modern instruments. Mainstream archaeology explains these achievements through generations of careful observation, mathematical development, and cultural dedication. Maya astronomers studied the sky over centuries, recording patterns and refining their understanding through accumulated knowledge. Their achievements were not the result of unknown technology, but of patience, intelligence, and a sophisticated intellectual tradition. Still, the codices continue to inspire speculation. Some have wondered whether the Maya possessed knowledge that has not been fully understood today, especially regarding their complex calendars and astronomical systems. Others have suggested that hidden meanings may exist within the symbols and calculations, waiting for further interpretation. While some of these ideas extend beyond accepted evidence, they reflect a continuing fascination with manuscripts that contain information from a world separated from us by centuries. The Maya writing system itself was once considered one of the great mysteries of archaeology. For many years, scholars struggled to understand the meaning of Maya glyphs. Through decades of research, linguistic analysis, and comparison with surviving inscriptions, researchers gradually revealed that the script represented a sophisticated combination of sounds and symbols. This breakthrough transformed the study of Maya history, allowing ancient voices to emerge from the silence. Yet, even with these advances, many questions remain. The surviving codices represent only a small fraction of what once existed. How many texts disappeared before they could ever be studied? What stories, discoveries, and observations were lost when countless manuscripts were destroyed? The Mayan Codices are more than ancient books. They are fragments of a civilization's memory, pieces of knowledge preserved through immense challenges. Their pages reveal a society that watched the heavens, measured time, and searched for meaning within the natural world. But they also remind us of how much can vanish across the centuries. Somewhere within the gaps of history may lie forgotten writings, unfinished interpretations, and lost ideas that could change our understanding of the ancient Maya. The remaining pages continue to speak quietly, offering answers while guarding mysteries that may never be completely revealed. Leaving behind the fragile pages of the Mayan Codices, our journey now turns toward another object whose meaning remains uncertain, a small stone artifact that has drawn attention because of its unusual appearance and mysterious origins. Unlike the grand temples of ancient civilizations or the carefully preserved manuscripts of lost cultures, the Clapham Junction stone is a far more modest discovery. It is a small, carved object, found not in an ancient city or forgotten tomb, but in the landscape of modern Britain, where its presence has raised questions about time, craftsmanship, and the limits of what we can confidently understand. The object, known as the Clapham Junction Stone, was reportedly discovered in the early 1970s near Clapham Junction in London, England. At first glance, it appears to be a simple piece of stone, roughly shaped and marked with unusual carvings. Its surface contains a series of lines, grooves, and patterns that some observers have interpreted as deliberate symbols rather than natural markings. The uncertainty surrounding the stone begins with a basic question: what exactly is it? Unlike many archaeological discoveries, the Clapham Junction stone does not come from a secure excavation site with clearly documented layers of soil, associated artifacts, or reliable evidence connecting it to a specific historical period. This absence of context makes interpretation extremely difficult. Archaeologists often depend not only on the object itself, but also on where it was found, what surrounded it, and what other discoveries appeared nearby. Without that information, even the most intriguing artifact can become difficult to place within history. Some have suggested that the markings on the stone resemble ancient writing systems, maps, or symbolic designs. These interpretations have led to speculation that the object could be connected to an unknown culture or an earlier period of human activity. The possibility of a forgotten message carved into stone naturally attracts curiosity, especially when the meaning of the markings cannot be immediately identified. However, mainstream archaeological approaches require careful examination. Many objects that appear unusual at first can often be explained through more ordinary processes. Natural cracks, weathering, accidental marks, or relatively recent carvings can sometimes resemble intentional designs. Determining whether a pattern was created by human hands requires detailed analysis of the material, the tools used, and the historical setting. In the case of the Clapham Junction stone, there is not enough widely accepted evidence to establish an ancient origin. Researchers have not confirmed that the markings represent a known script, nor has the object been securely dated to a particular civilization or time period. Yet, the stone continues to attract attention because it represents a type of mystery that appears throughout archaeology: an object without a clear story. Every artifact begins with a moment of creation. Someone shaped it, marked it, or placed it somewhere. But when the connection between the object and its creator is lost, interpretation becomes a search through possibilities. The stone becomes separated from the human intentions behind it, leaving researchers with only physical clues. Some alternative interpretations have proposed that the Clapham Junction stone could represent evidence of unexpected contact between cultures, forgotten knowledge, or even a surviving trace of a much older tradition. These ideas remain speculative and are not supported by strong archaeological evidence, but they reflect a broader fascination with objects that seem to exist outside familiar historical narratives. The appeal of such discoveries often comes from a simple human instinct, the desire to understand what came before us. Throughout history, people have looked at mysterious objects and wondered about the hands that created them. A carved stone is not only a physical object, it is a fragment of a conversation between the past and the present. The challenge is separating genuine evidence from assumptions. Archaeology is built on careful investigation. A discovery becomes meaningful when it can be connected to a wider pattern of evidence. A single object, no matter how unusual, must be studied alongside other findings, historical records, and scientific analysis. Without those connections, the story behind an artifact can remain uncertain. Still, uncertainty does not make an object meaningless. The Clapham Junction stone invites questions about how many small discoveries have passed unnoticed throughout history. How many objects have been lost, misunderstood, or separated from their original surroundings? How much knowledge disappears when artifacts are removed from their context? Across the world, archaeologists frequently uncover objects that challenge expectations. Some reveal forgotten technologies, overlooked traditions, or previously unknown aspects of ancient life. Others become reminders of how difficult it can be to reconstruct events that happened hundreds or thousands of years ago. The mystery surrounding the stone is not necessarily that it proves something extraordinary, but that it highlights the fragile nature of historical understanding. Time does not preserve everything equally. Written records disappear, buildings collapse, and objects become separated from the people who made them. What remains is often incomplete, a collection of fragments waiting to be interpreted. The Clapham Junction stone exists within that space between discovery and explanation. To some, it is a curious artifact whose true purpose remains unknown. To others, it represents the possibility that hidden chapters of human history may still exist beyond the boundaries of current knowledge. Perhaps the most fascinating question is not only what the stone means, but what other objects like it may still be waiting to be found. Buried beneath modern landscapes, stored away in forgotten collections, or overlooked because their stories have been lost, could there be countless pieces of history that have yet to reveal their secrets? For now, the Clapham Junction stone remains a quiet reminder that even the smallest discoveries can open the door to larger mysteries, and that the past still holds countless stories waiting to be uncovered. Leaving behind the unanswered questions surrounding the Clapham Junction stone, our journey now moves toward a place where mystery is not hidden within a small artifact, but spread across an entire landscape. On the southern coast of England, rising above the rolling hills of Dorset, lies one of the largest and most complex hill forts ever constructed in Britain. Known as Maiden Castle, this immense earthwork stands as a reminder of a world shaped by conflict, community, and beliefs that remain only partially understood. From a distance, Maiden Castle appears almost like a natural feature of the landscape. Long ridges and deep valleys flow across the hill, blending into the surrounding countryside. But as the details emerge, the scale of human effort becomes clear. Massive earth banks, deep defensive ditches, and carefully planned entrances reveal that this was not simply a settlement. It was a carefully designed stronghold created by a society capable of organizing thousands of people toward a shared purpose. Located near the modern town of Dorchester in Dorset, Maiden Castle covers an area of roughly 47 acres, making it the largest hill fort in Britain. Its earliest origins stretch back thousands of years, with evidence of activity at the site beginning around 3500 BC during the Neolithic period. However, the structure that dominates the landscape today developed much later, particularly during the Iron Age, when communities across Britain constructed hill forts as centers of power, trade, and protection. The first impression of Maiden Castle is one of defense. Its enormous banks and ditches create multiple layers of protection, forcing anyone approaching the site to navigate a complex system of barriers. The entrances were deliberately designed with narrow pathways and sharp turns, making it difficult for attackers to enter quickly. For many years, archaeologists viewed hill forts primarily as military structures. In this interpretation, Maiden Castle was a fortress built during a time of increasing competition between tribal groups. Its elevated position allowed inhabitants to observe the surrounding landscape, while its defenses offered protection during periods of conflict. But as archaeological research developed, a more complicated picture emerged. Maiden Castle was not simply a place of war. Excavations have revealed evidence of homes, workshops, storage areas, and activity connected to everyday life. The people who lived there were farmers, craftspeople, and traders. They raised animals, produced tools, created pottery, and participated in networks that connected communities across ancient Britain. This raises a deeper question. Was Maiden Castle truly a fortress first, or was it something more complex, a place where people lived, gathered, exchanged goods, and expressed their identity? The scale of the site suggests that it held importance far beyond a simple village. Building and maintaining such enormous earthworks required cooperation, planning, and leadership. Thousands of hours of labor would have been needed to dig the defensive ditches and raise the towering banks. Why would an Iron Age community invest so much energy into reshaping an entire hill? One possibility is that the construction itself was a demonstration of power. The walls of Maiden Castle were not only physical barriers, they were symbols visible across the landscape. They announced that a powerful community existed there, one capable of controlling resources and organizing large groups of people. Another possibility is that the site carried social or ceremonial importance. Across ancient Britain, hill forts were not always purely defensive. Some may have served as gathering places for rituals, seasonal events, or moments of community decision-making. While direct evidence of specific ceremonies at Maiden Castle is limited, its size and central position suggest that it may have played a role in the cultural life of the surrounding region. The mystery deepens when considering what happened there during the Roman conquest of Britain in the 1st century AD. Around AD 43, Roman forces began expanding into Britain, bringing a new military and political order. Maiden Castle became one of the places associated with this dramatic period of change. Archaeological evidence suggests that the site experienced violence during the Roman advance. Excavations have uncovered signs of conflict, including weapons, damage, and human remains. These discoveries have often been connected to a possible confrontation between the local inhabitants and Roman forces. However, the exact events remain difficult to reconstruct. Ancient sources provide limited information about individual battles in Britain, and archaeology often reveals only fragments of what happened. Was Maiden Castle the scene of a final stand against Roman expansion? Was it abandoned after defeat? Or did its importance gradually decline as a new political system transformed the landscape? The answers remain uncertain. Adding to the fascination of Maiden Castle is the discovery of unusual burials and evidence of human activity that does not always fit simple explanations. Some remains have shown signs of injury or unusual treatment, raising questions about warfare, ritual practices, and the social meanings attached to death in Iron Age communities. Such discoveries have encouraged different interpretations. Some researchers have explored the possibility that certain burials reflected acts of violence during periods of conflict. Others have considered whether some individuals may have held special roles within the community. As with many archaeological mysteries, the evidence allows several possibilities, but rarely provides a single, complete answer. The name itself, Maiden Castle, is also a reminder of how later generations interpreted ancient places. Despite its name, the site has no confirmed connection to young women or medieval legends. The name likely comes from older words related to strength or fortification rather than any romantic story. Over centuries, landscapes accumulate layers of meaning, with each generation adding its own interpretations to places it inherits. Beyond the archaeology, Maiden Castle represents a larger mystery about ancient societies. The people who built it left behind no written explanation of their world. We can study their tools, homes, and defenses, but their thoughts, beliefs, and fears remain mostly hidden. What did the hill mean to those who lived there? Was it a symbol of safety, a statement of authority, a sacred landscape, or all of these things at once? Modern researchers continue to examine Maiden Castle using new methods, including environmental studies, advanced surveying techniques, and detailed analysis of artifacts. Each discovery adds another piece to the story, but the complete picture remains incomplete. The site also challenges the idea that ancient communities were simple or isolated. The people who created Maiden Castle were capable of remarkable organization. They transformed an entire hill into a carefully planned environment, connecting architecture with survival, identity, and social structure. Yet, the silence of the landscape remains. The enormous banks and ditches still follow the shape of the hill, just as they did thousands of years ago. The pathways where ancient inhabitants walked are still visible. The remains of their homes and tools continue to provide clues, but the voices of the people themselves are gone. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Maiden Castle is not how it was built, but why it mattered so much to the people who built it. What hopes, fears, and beliefs were buried beneath those ancient earthworks. And as researchers continue uncovering new evidence, what other forgotten stories might still be waiting beneath the layers of this remarkable landscape? Leaving behind the towering earthworks of Maiden Castle, our exploration now moves toward another ancient landscape where the mystery is not found in walls, fortifications, or buried structures, but in symbols carved directly into the surface of the earth. In the western outskirts of Glasgow, Scotland, beneath layers of soil and centuries of change, lies one of the most remarkable examples of prehistoric rock art ever discovered in Britain, the Cochno Stone. Hidden within the landscape of Faifley, on the edge of the Kilpatrick Hills, the Cochno Stone is a massive slab of sandstone covered with hundreds of carved markings. Its surface contains spirals, circles, grooves, and geometric patterns known as cup and ring marks. These mysterious designs were created thousands of years ago, long before written records existed in this region, leaving behind a message whose meaning has never been fully understood. The stone itself is enormous, measuring approximately 13 meters by 8 meters. Its surface is not decorated with images of animals, rulers, or battles, but with abstract symbols that seem to repeat in carefully arranged patterns. Some carvings consist of small, circular depressions surrounded by rings, while others form complex pathways of connected lines that appear to move across the stone like a map. The people who created these markings belong to prehistoric communities living in Britain during the Neolithic and Bronze Age periods, likely between around 3000 and 1000 BC. These societies left behind little written evidence, meaning their beliefs and intentions must be reconstructed through archaeology, comparison, and careful interpretation. The first challenge is understanding what these symbols represented. The most widely accepted explanation is that the Cochno Stone is an example of prehistoric rock art, a tradition found across parts of Europe. Similar cup and ring markings appear in Scotland, Ireland, northern England, and other regions. Archaeologists believe these designs may have held symbolic, social, or ceremonial meanings, although their exact purpose remains uncertain. Unlike writing systems that can be translated through known languages, these carvings do not provide a clear message. They do not tell us the names of their creators, describe events, or explain their beliefs. Instead, they present a visual language from a world that disappeared thousands of years ago. Were these symbols connected to spiritual practices? Were they markers of territory or important locations? Did they represent ideas about nature, ancestors, or the relationship between humans and the cosmos? These questions remain open. One of the reasons the Cochno Stone has attracted so much attention is its unusual complexity. While many prehistoric carvings contain a small number of markings, the density and variety of designs on this stone create the impression of deliberate planning. The patterns seem to flow across the surface, creating an arrangement that appears almost organized like a diagram. This has led some observers to wonder whether the stone could have served as a kind of ancient map. Some have suggested that the circles and lines may represent landscapes, rivers, astronomical observations, or symbolic journeys. However, these interpretations remain speculative, as there is currently no archaeological evidence proving that the Cochno Stone functioned as a map or astronomical instrument. The mystery becomes even deeper when considering the lack of written records from the people who created it. Thousands of years separate the modern observer from the original artists. Their language has vanished, their traditions have changed, and their explanations are no longer available. The stone remains, but the meaning behind it has faded. In the 20th century, the Cochno Stone gained renewed attention when Reverend James Harvey MacLeod documented and studied the carvings. Concerned about damage from weather, visitors, and development, he worked to preserve the site and bring attention to its importance. Later, in 1965, archaeologists decided to cover the stone with soil to protect it from vandalism and erosion. For decades, the Cochno Stone remained hidden beneath the ground. This unusual act of preservation created a strange situation. One of Scotland's most significant prehistoric artifacts was deliberately buried, not because it was forgotten, but because protecting it meant removing it from public view. Beneath the soil, the ancient carvings remained preserved, waiting for future generations to study them. In recent years, researchers returned to the site using modern technology. Digital mapping, photography, and three-dimensional scanning allowed archaeologists to examine the carvings without exposing the stone to unnecessary damage. These methods revealed details that had not been visible for decades and helped researchers create a more accurate record of the patterns. Yet technology has revealed the markings without fully revealing their meaning. This is one of the enduring mysteries of prehistoric archaeology. Modern tools allow us to see ancient objects with greater precision than ever before, but seeing does not always mean understanding. A symbol can be measured, photographed, and analyzed, but its original purpose may remain beyond reach. Some alternative theories have suggested that the Cochno Stone contains hidden knowledge from an advanced prehistoric culture. Others have proposed connections to ancient astronomy or lost traditions that disappeared before recorded history. These ideas reflect the fascination surrounding the stone, but they remain outside mainstream archaeological interpretation because there is not enough supporting evidence. Still, the possibility of forgotten meanings continues to capture the imagination. The ancient world was not only a place of survival and necessity. Early humans created art, symbols, and monuments that expressed ideas beyond immediate practical needs. The existence of the Cochno Stone reminds us that prehistoric societies were capable of abstract thought, creativity, and symbolic communication. Perhaps the most important mystery is not whether the carvings represent a secret code, but what they reveal about the minds of the people who created them. Why did they choose this location? Why did they spend time carving these patterns into stone? Was the act of creating the symbols itself more important than the final design? Did generations return to the stone, adding new markings and continuing a tradition that connected the past with the present? These questions are difficult to answer because the evidence is incomplete. The surrounding landscape may have played a role in the stone's importance. Ancient communities often selected locations that carried meaning, whether because of natural features, visibility, resources, or spiritual associations. A large exposed stone surface covered in carefully carved patterns would have been a powerful presence within the prehistoric environment. Imagine standing beside the Cochno Stone thousands of years ago. There would be no cities nearby, no roads, no modern sounds, only the landscape, the sky, and the carved surface beneath your feet. To the people who created these markings, the stone may have represented something deeply meaningful, something connected to their understanding of existence itself, but that meaning has been separated from us by time. The mystery of the Cochno Stone also reflects a broader challenge in archaeology, the difficulty of interpreting cultures that did not leave written explanations. Much of human history exists in fragments. A tool, a carving, or a monument can survive while the thoughts behind it disappear. The stone has endured storms, changing landscapes, and human activity for thousands of years. It has been exposed, buried, rediscovered, and studied again. Each generation approaches it with new questions and new methods, yet the ancient symbols continue to resist simple answers. Today, the Cochno Stone stands as a remarkable reminder that the distant past was not empty or primitive. It was filled with people who observed the world, created symbols, and searched for meaning in ways we are still trying to understand. Perhaps somewhere within those circles and carved pathways is a message left by a forgotten community. Or perhaps the true meaning was never meant to be translated into words at all. As researchers continue examining prehistoric landscapes across Britain and beyond, the Cochno Stone remains a silent witness to a vanished world. And beneath its ancient markings, one question continues to remain. What other stories were carved into the earth by people whose voices have long since disappeared? Leaving behind the ancient symbols carved into the Cochno Stone, our journey now moves across the ocean to a landscape where human ambition transformed an entire valley into a city of earth and mystery. In the dry coastal plains of northern Peru, surrounded by desert winds and the distant peaks of the Andes, rise the remains of one of the largest ancient pyramid complexes in South America, the Túcume Pyramids. Spread across more than 200 hectares near the modern town of Túcume in the Lambayeque region, this extraordinary site contains dozens of massive earthen structures built from millions of handmade adobe bricks. Unlike the stone pyramids of Egypt, these monuments were not created from carefully cut blocks, but from mud shaped by human hands and hardened beneath the intense desert sun. From a distance, many of the pyramids appear like natural hills slowly reclaimed by the landscape. Wind and rain have softened their edges, vegetation has grown across their surfaces, and centuries of erosion have hidden much of their original form. But beneath these layers lies evidence of one of the most complex societies to emerge along the ancient coast of Peru. The story of Túcume begins around AD 1000, when the Lambayeque culture established the settlement after the decline of earlier coastal civilizations. Later, the site was occupied by the Chimu civilization and eventually incorporated into the expanding Inca Empire. For centuries, Túcume served as a major political, religious, and economic center, connecting rulers, communities, and trade networks across the region. At the heart of the site are its enormous pyramids, including structures such as Huaca Larga, one of the largest adobe constructions ever built. Unlike traditional images of pyramids as tombs or isolated monuments, the pyramids of Túcume were part of a living urban landscape. They contained plazas, corridors, storage areas, ceremonial spaces, and elite residences. These were not simply places where people buried their dead, they were centers of power. The construction of these enormous adobe structures required extraordinary organization. Thousands of workers would have been needed to produce bricks, transport materials, and build layer upon layer of rising platforms. Each adobe brick represented time and effort, created from earth, water, and organic materials before being placed into the growing monument. But why build on such a massive scale in a harsh desert environment? One explanation lies in the importance of religion and political authority. In many ancient societies of the Andes, monumental architecture was closely connected to leadership and the sacred world. A ruler's ability to organize labor and create impressive structures demonstrated not only wealth, but a connection to divine forces. The pyramids of Túcume may have served as places where rulers communicated with ancestors, performed ceremonies, and reinforced their authority. The height of the structures would have separated important activities from ordinary daily life, creating spaces where political and spiritual worlds came together. Yet, the site contains mysteries that continue to intrigue researchers. One of the most fascinating aspects of Túcume is its unusual transformation over time. Unlike some ancient cities that were simply abandoned, Túcume appears to have remained an important place for centuries, changing as different cultures gained control. Each society added its own structures, traditions, and meanings to the landscape. This raises questions about continuity and adaptation. When a new civilization arrived, did it replace the beliefs of those before it? Or did it preserve and reshape older traditions? Did the pyramids represent the same ideas to every generation that lived beside them? Archaeological evidence suggests that Túcume was deeply connected to ceremonial practices. Excavations have uncovered offerings, burials, and objects that reveal complex relationships between the living and the dead. The people of the region believed ancestors remained powerful forces, capable of influencing fertility, prosperity, and the balance of the world. Among the most intriguing discoveries are burials connected to elite individuals. Some remains show signs of ritual treatment, suggesting that ceremonies surrounding death were carefully planned and meaningful. These findings provide insight into ancient beliefs, but they also create new questions about the rituals themselves. What did these ceremonies represent to the people who performed them? Were the pyramids places of communication between human beings and supernatural forces? Were they designed to maintain harmony between society, nature, and the unseen world? The natural environment surrounding Túcume adds another layer of mystery. The Lambayeque region is a landscape of extremes, where fertile valleys exist beside some of the driest deserts on Earth. Water management was essential for survival, and ancient communities developed sophisticated systems to control rivers and irrigation. The ability to transform an arid landscape into productive farmland required knowledge passed through generations. The pyramids themselves may have reflected this relationship between human society and the environment, a reminder that power depended not only on rulers and armies, but also on the ability to manage the forces of nature. However, the decline of Túcume remains an area of continuing investigation. Environmental changes, political conflicts, and the expansion of the Inca Empire all played roles in the later history of the site. The arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century brought another dramatic transformation, as ancient traditions were disrupted and new systems of power replaced the old ones. Yet the pyramids endured. For centuries, the structures stood silently beneath the desert sky, their original purposes gradually becoming forgotten. Local traditions preserved memories of the site, while archaeologists later began uncovering the complexity hidden beneath the eroded surfaces. When modern researchers first studied Túcume in detail, they encountered a landscape that challenged earlier assumptions about ancient American civilizations. The site revealed that monumental architecture was not limited to stone cities or famous empires. Human creativity also flourished through earth, clay, and carefully organized communities. Still, the pyramids inspire questions beyond archaeology. Some observers have wondered whether the arrangement of the structures reflects deeper symbolic patterns connected to astronomy, geography, or ancient cosmology. While certain ancient Andean societies carefully observed celestial cycles, direct evidence linking the entire Túcume complex to astronomical design remains limited. These interpretations remain possibilities rather than established conclusions. But the questions themselves reveal why places like Túcume continue to fascinate us. Ancient monuments often represent more than their physical materials. They carry the beliefs, fears, ambitions, and hopes of the people who created them. A pyramid is not only a structure of earth and brick, it is a statement about what a society values enough to preserve for generations. The mystery of Túcume lies partly in the scale of human effort behind it. Every layer of adobe represents countless decisions made by individuals whose names are unknown today. Workers who shaped bricks, builders who planned walls, and communities who gathered around these monuments all contributed to a landscape that survived long after their voices disappeared. Standing among the pyramids today, it is possible to imagine the activity that once surrounded them. Markets filled with movement, ceremonies echoing across plazas, leaders performing rituals, and communities gathering beneath the desert sky. But the details of those moments remain distant. The pyramids tell us that a powerful civilization existed here, but they do not reveal every thought behind their creation. They show us where people lived, but not everything they believed. They preserve evidence of achievement, but also leave behind unanswered questions. Why did the people of Túcume continue building these enormous structures for centuries? What meanings were attached to each platform, plaza, and hidden chamber? How much of their spiritual world remains buried beneath the layers of earth? Today, archaeologists continue studying the site using excavation, conservation, and modern technology. Each discovery adds another piece to the story of Túcume, revealing a civilization that was sophisticated, organized, and deeply connected to its environment. Yet, the desert continues to guard many secrets. The Túcume Pyramids remain as a reminder that some of humanity's greatest achievements were not created from precious materials or preserved through written records. They were created from ordinary earth, transformed through cooperation and imagination into something extraordinary. And as the winds continue moving across the ancient valley, covering and uncovering traces of the people who built this remarkable city, one question remains. How many forgotten stories still lie beneath the silent surfaces of the world's oldest monuments, waiting for future generations to uncover them? Leaving behind the silent adobe pyramids of Túcume, our journey now moves toward another ancient gateway, where stone was transformed into a symbol of power, protection, and identity. Far from the deserts of South America, in the rugged landscapes of central Anatolia, an enormous stone entrance still watches over the remains of one of the ancient world's most influential civilizations. Known as the Hittite Lion Gate, this monumental passage once marked the entrance to the city of Hattusa, a place that was both the heart of an empire and a reminder of a civilization that disappeared from human memory for centuries. Rising from the hills of modern-day Boğazkale in Turkey, the remains of Hattusa reveal the ambitions of the Hittites, a powerful Bronze Age civilization that flourished between roughly 1600 and 1200 BC. Massive defensive walls surrounded the city, stretching across hills and valleys, creating one of the most impressive urban landscapes of the ancient Near East. Among these walls stood the Lion Gate. Two enormous stone lions are carved into the entrance, facing outward as if guarding the passage between the outside world and the city beyond. Their bodies emerge from the stone with a sense of movement and strength, their presence designed to communicate more than decoration. They were symbols of protection, authority, and perhaps a connection between the human world and the forces believed to influence it. To those who approached Hattusa thousands of years ago, the gateway would have been a powerful sight. The city behind it represented the center of an empire that controlled large territories, negotiated with foreign kingdoms, and challenged the influence of neighboring powers. The Hittites were once among the great powers of the ancient world. They fought against Egypt, formed diplomatic alliances, and developed a sophisticated political system. Their kingdom reached its height during the 2nd millennium BC, yet for centuries after its collapse, their story almost disappeared. Unlike Egypt or Greece, whose monuments remained widely known throughout history, the Hittites faded from collective memory. Their cities were abandoned, their language became unreadable, and their empire became little more than a name mentioned in ancient texts. It was not until modern archaeological discoveries that the Hittites returned to historical awareness. The rediscovery of Hattusa in the 19th and early 20th centuries transformed our understanding of the Bronze Age. Excavations revealed enormous archives of clay tablets, including thousands of documents written in cuneiform. These records contain treaties, laws, religious texts, diplomatic correspondence, and details about daily administration. The city that had seemed silent for centuries began to speak again. Yet, even with these discoveries, many aspects of Hittite civilization remain mysterious. The Lion Gate itself raises questions about symbolism, belief, and the purpose of monumental architecture. Why lions? Across many ancient cultures, lions represented strength, kingship, guardianship, and supernatural power. They appeared in the art of Mesopotamia, Egypt, Anatolia, and other regions as creatures associated with authority and protection. For the Hittites, placing lions at a city entrance may have served both practical and symbolic purposes. The gateway was not only a physical opening in the city walls, it was a threshold, a place where one world ended and another began. Ancient societies often viewed entrances as meaningful spaces. Gates separated safety from danger, civilization from wilderness, and order from chaos. By placing powerful symbols at these boundaries, people expressed ideas about protection and control. The Lion Gate may have communicated a message to visitors. This was a place of strength, a city under the protection of powerful forces. However, the deeper beliefs behind these symbols remain partly hidden. The Hittites left written records, but understanding their religious worldview requires interpretation. Their texts describe numerous gods connected to storms, mountains, fertility, warfare, and nature. Their religious traditions were complex, combining local Anatolian beliefs with influences from neighboring civilizations. The lions at Hattusa may have carried meanings connected to these beliefs, but the exact intentions of the original craftsmen are difficult to recover. The construction of the gate itself also reveals the remarkable abilities of Hittite builders. The stones were carefully shaped and positioned to create a durable entrance within the city's defensive system. The walls of Hattusa were not simple barriers. They were carefully engineered structures that adapted to the natural landscape. The city included multiple gates, underground passages, temples, royal buildings, and storage areas. Its design reflected a society with advanced knowledge of architecture and urban planning. One of the most intriguing aspects of Hattusa is the relationship between its physical remains and the events that led to its disappearance. Around 1200 BC, many civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean experienced a period of dramatic collapse. Powerful kingdoms declined, trade networks weakened, and major cities were abandoned or destroyed. This era remains one of the great turning points of ancient history. The Hittite Empire vanished during this period. The exact causes are still debated. Possible factors include warfare, political instability, economic pressures, environmental changes, and disruptions in trade. Some researchers have also examined the role of migrations and conflicts involving groups often associated with the wider upheavals of the time. But no single explanation fully accounts for the disappearance of such a powerful civilization. What happened inside Hattusa during its final days? Did its inhabitants leave gradually, or did sudden events force them away? Did the Lion Gate witness the final moments of the empire it once represented? The stones provide clues, but they do not tell the complete story. Over time, the abandoned city was reclaimed by nature. The voices of its rulers, workers, soldiers, and craftsmen disappeared. The lion carvings remained, waiting beneath the earth until archaeologists uncovered them again. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout history. Civilizations rise, create monuments, and eventually fade. Their achievements may become forgotten until another generation rediscovers them. The Hittite Lion Gate stands as one of these reminders, a physical connection between the modern world and a civilization that was once lost. Yet, the gate also invites broader questions about how much ancient history remains hidden. The Hittites were not unknown because they lacked complexity or influence. They disappeared from memory because the evidence connecting them to the modern world was lost. Their rediscovery shows how incomplete our understanding of the past can be. How many other civilizations may have existed whose stories have not yet been recovered? How many monuments remain buried beneath landscapes that have changed over thousands of years? The Lion Gate also challenges the way we view ancient achievements. The people who created it were not simply builders creating a defensive structure. They were artists, engineers, political thinkers, and storytellers. Through stone, they expressed ideas about power, protection, and the relationship between humans and the unseen forces they believed shaped their world. The lions continue to stand at the entrance of Hattusa, silent but unchanged. Their carved faces have watched centuries pass, empires disappear, and landscapes transform around them. Today, researchers continue examining Hittite texts, architecture, and artifacts, uncovering more about a civilization that once stood among the greatest powers of the ancient world. Each discovery brings new understanding, but also new questions. Perhaps the enduring mystery of the Hittite Lion Gate is not only what it meant to the people who built it, but what other messages ancient civilizations left behind that we have not yet learned how to read. Beyond the carved stone and weathered walls, beyond the remains of a forgotten capital, something of the Hittite world still remains hidden. And as archaeologists continue searching through the ruins of the past, the question remains: how many more voices from vanished civilizations are still waiting beneath the surface, ready to tell their stories? Leaving behind the ancient gateway of Hattusa, where stone lions once guarded the entrance to a powerful empire, our journey now moves toward another forgotten landscape shaped by ambition, ritual, and unanswered questions. In the fertile plains of southwestern Iran, where rivers once nourished some of the earliest urban societies on Earth, the remains of an ancient city lie beneath the desert surface. This is Haft Tappeh, a site whose ruins reveal a civilization connected to one of the oldest cultures in human history, yet whose full story remains incomplete. Located near the modern city of Susa in the Khuzestan province of Iran, Haft Tappeh, meaning Seven Hills, is a vast archaeological site containing the remains of a settlement that flourished during the 2nd millennium BC. Its name comes from the series of artificial mounds that rise from the landscape, each one holding traces of ancient structures, burial chambers, and forgotten activity. At first glance, the site appears quiet and almost empty. The winds move across the earth, and the remains of ancient walls blend into the surrounding landscape. But beneath these mounds is evidence of a society that existed during a crucial period of the ancient Near East, a time when kingdoms were forming, writing systems were developing, and human communities were creating increasingly complex forms of organization. Haft Tappeh is closely connected with the Elamite civilization, one of the oldest cultures of the Iranian plateau. The Elamites occupied a region east of Mesopotamia and maintained their own language, traditions, and political systems for thousands of years. While neighboring civilizations such as Mesopotamia often receive greater attention in popular history, the Elamites played an important role in shaping the ancient world. Their cities were centers of administration, religion, craftsmanship, and trade. They interacted with powerful kingdoms, sometimes through diplomacy and exchange, and at other times through conflict. Yet, much of their history remains less familiar because many aspects of their language and culture are still difficult to fully interpret. The discoveries at Haft Tappeh began revealing a more detailed picture of this forgotten world in the 20th century. Archaeologists uncovered large architectural complexes, including temples, administrative areas, and one of the most significant discoveries at the site: monumental royal tombs. These underground chambers contained evidence suggesting that Haft Tappeh was not simply an ordinary settlement. The scale and design of the structures indicate that it held an important ceremonial role, possibly connected to the royal family and religious traditions of the time. The discovery of these burial complexes raised important questions about Elamite beliefs surrounding death and memory. Why did ancient societies invest so much effort into creating elaborate spaces for the dead? Were these tombs designed only as final resting places, or did they serve as locations where the living maintained connections with their ancestors? Across the ancient world, death was often not viewed as an ending, but as part of a larger relationship between generations. Tombs could represent power, identity, and continuity. The rulers buried at Haft Tappeh may have been placed there not only to preserve their remains, but to maintain their presence within the spiritual and political life of the community. However, many details remain uncertain. The archaeological evidence suggests that Haft Tappeh was associated with the Elamite ruler Tepti Ahar, who lived during the 15th century BC. Inscriptions and discoveries from the site provide important clues about his reign, but much of the surrounding history remains incomplete. Who exactly lived at Haft Tappeh? How large was the population? What events led to the construction of such monumental buildings? These questions remain difficult to answer because ancient societies rarely leave behind complete records. Archaeologists must reconstruct the past from fragments, broken inscriptions, architectural remains, objects, and traces left behind by daily life. Among the most valuable discoveries at Haft Tappeh were thousands of clay tablets. These documents contain administrative information written in cuneiform, providing evidence about economic activities, labor organization, and the management of resources. These tablets reveal something remarkable. Behind the monumental structures were systems of planning and administration. The people of Haft Tappeh were not only builders and artisans, they were part of an organized society capable of recording information, managing supplies, and coordinating complex projects. Yet, even written records have limits. Ancient documents often tell us what rulers ordered, what goods were exchanged, or what activities were recorded. They rarely reveal the personal experiences of ordinary people. The voices of workers, farmers, craftspeople, and families remain much quieter. What did daily life feel like in Haft Tappeh? What hopes and fears shaped the people who walked its streets thousands of years ago? The site also raises questions about the relationship between Haft Tappeh and the broader Elamite world. The civilization existed between powerful neighbors, including Mesopotamian kingdoms that sometimes attempted to control or influence the region. Elam was not isolated. It was part of a complex network of political relationships that shaped the ancient Near East. This interaction created both opportunities and challenges. Trade brought resources and ideas, but rivalry brought conflict. The history of Elam is filled with moments of cooperation and confrontation with surrounding powers. The eventual decline of Haft Tappeh remains another area of investigation. Archaeologists continue studying why the settlement lost its importance and how changes in the region affected its development. Political shifts, environmental factors, economic pressures, and changing centers of power may all have contributed. But unlike the dramatic destruction of some ancient cities, the end of Haft Tappeh is not fully understood. Did the population leave gradually? Was the city abandoned after political changes? Did another center replace it as the focus of power? The silence of the ruins leaves these possibilities open. Beyond the historical evidence, Haft Tappeh has also attracted curiosity because of its connection to one of humanity's earliest civilizations. The site represents a period when societies were experimenting with new forms of organization, creating cities, writing systems, and monumental architecture. Some alternative interpretations have suggested that hidden chambers or undiscovered structures beneath the mounds may reveal unexpected information about the ancient Elamites. While such possibilities remain speculative, they reflect a broader truth about archaeology. Every excavation has the potential to change our understanding of the past. The earth often preserves only fragments. A wall survives while the roof disappears. A tablet remains while the person who wrote it is forgotten. A tomb reveals the existence of a ruler, but not the complete story of their life. Haft Tappeh exists within this space between discovery and uncertainty. The site is especially fascinating because it challenges the idea that ancient history belongs only to the most famous civilizations. Long before modern nations existed, cultures like Elam created sophisticated societies with their own languages, traditions, and achievements. Their stories were not absent. They were simply waiting to be rediscovered. Walking through the remains of Haft Tappeh today, it is possible to imagine a world very different from our own. Temples filled with ceremony. Administrators recording transactions on clay tablets. Workers shaping buildings from earth and brick. Families living beneath the shadow of monuments created by generations before them. Yet, the voices of those people are gone. Only the remains remain. The mounds of Haft Tappeh continue to stand as silent witnesses to a civilization that once played an important role in the ancient world. Each discovery adds another piece to the story, but the complete picture remains unfinished. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Haft Tappeh is not simply what happened there, but how much remains hidden beneath the surface. Beneath these ancient hills may still be forgotten rooms, lost records, and undiscovered evidence waiting to reveal more about the people who built this remarkable place. And as archaeologists continue exploring the layers of earth and history, one question remains. How many other forgotten civilizations are still waiting beneath the ground, holding stories that humanity has not yet learned how to hear? Leaving behind the buried cities and forgotten kingdoms of the ancient world. Our exploration now moves from archaeology into the mysterious space where history, geography, and legend begin to overlap. Across centuries of maps and maritime records, sailors have described an island that seemed to exist somewhere beyond the western shores of Ireland, a place of forests, mist, and unusual discovery. This island was known as Hy-Brasil. Unlike the ruins of ancient civilizations, Hy-Brasil has left behind no temples, no carved stones, and no physical remains waiting beneath the soil. Its mystery exists within old maps, written accounts, and the imagination of generations who searched for a land that may have never existed, or may represent something that has not yet been fully understood. For centuries, European cartographers included an island called Brasil, Hy-Brasil, or similar names in the Atlantic Ocean, often placing it somewhere west of Ireland. The island was frequently shown as a circular landmass, sometimes divided by a river or described as being covered in rich vegetation. On some maps, it appeared with remarkable confidence, as though its existence was an established geographic fact. But when sailors traveled to the region, they found nothing. No coastline, no mountains, no hidden kingdom rising from the waves. The disappearance of Hy-Brasil transformed it from a geographic location into one of the most enduring maritime mysteries in European history. The earliest known references to Hy-Brasil appear in medieval Irish traditions. The name is often connected to the Old Irish word Briesel, associated with a figure from Celtic mythology known as Briesel, sometimes described as a powerful or ancient ruler. Irish legends spoke of mysterious islands beyond the Western Ocean, places associated with extraordinary landscapes and connections to the other world. In these stories, distant islands were not always understood as ordinary places. They could represent sacred spaces, lands of immortality, or locations where the boundaries between the human world and the supernatural became unclear. One of the most famous legends connected to Hy-Brasil describes an island that was hidden by mist and appeared only once every 7 years. According to some versions of the tradition, the island could not be reached unless specific conditions were met, creating a story of a place that was always nearby but never fully accessible. At first, such accounts may appear to belong entirely to mythology. Yet, medieval maps often combined known geography with religious beliefs, traveler reports, and incomplete information. The line between fact and legend was not always clear. During the Age of Exploration, European mapmakers faced enormous challenges. Oceans remained largely unknown, and information traveled slowly between distant regions. A sailor's report, a misunderstood coastline, or a repeated story could influence maps for generations. This raises an important question. Was Hy-Brasil created from imagination, or was it based on a real observation that was later misunderstood? Some historians believe the legend may have originated from natural features in the Atlantic. Certain islands, especially those surrounded by fog and changing weather conditions, could appear and disappear from view. A distant landmass hidden by mist might have seemed like a mysterious island that vanished into the ocean. Others have suggested that Hy-Brasil may have been inspired by real islands that were poorly mapped or later disappeared from navigation records. Volcanic activity, shifting coastlines, and errors in early cartography could all contribute to geographic confusion. There are also theories connecting Hy-Brasil to ancient voyages across the Atlantic. Some researchers have explored the possibility that early explorers from Ireland or other regions reached distant lands and brought back stories that became transformed over time. These ideas remain debated, as direct archaeological evidence for such journeys is limited. However, the possibility of ancient transoceanic travel is not impossible in itself. Human beings have always explored beyond familiar horizons. Ancient sailors crossed difficult seas using knowledge of winds, currents, and stars. The question is not whether people were capable of long-distance travel, but whether specific journeys occurred and whether evidence of them remains. Hy-Brasil became especially famous because of its appearance on maps created between the 14th and 19th centuries. One of the earliest known depictions appears on the Catalan Atlas from 1375, while later maps continued to show the island in different forms. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect is not that mapmakers included an imaginary island, but that they continued doing so for centuries. Why did the image survive? In historical cartography, repeated appearances do not always prove accuracy. Maps often copied information from earlier sources, carrying forward mistakes alongside discoveries. A fictional place could remain visible long after doubts about its existence emerged. Yet, the persistence of Hy-Brasil suggests that the idea held cultural importance. It represented more than a location. It symbolized the unknown, the possibility that the world still contained hidden places beyond the limits of human knowledge. During the 19th century, reports of mysterious Atlantic islands continued to appear. Some sailors claimed to have seen unusual land formations or distant shores that could not later be located. These stories added new layers to the Hy-Brasil mystery, although many were difficult to verify. Modern geography provides a clearer picture of the Atlantic. Satellite imagery, ocean surveys, and advanced navigation systems have mapped the region extensively. No large island matching the traditional descriptions of Hy-Brasil has been discovered, but the absence of physical evidence does not erase the historical importance of the legend. The story of Hy-Brasil reveals how humans have always attempted to understand the unknown. Before modern technology, maps were not only tools of navigation, they were records of possibility. They contained what people knew, what they believed, and what they hoped might exist beyond the horizon. In this way, mysterious islands served a purpose. They represented unanswered questions. The legend also reflects a deeper human fascination with hidden worlds. Throughout history, people have searched for lost cities, undiscovered lands, and forgotten civilizations. The desire to find something beyond the familiar has influenced exploration, science, and storytelling for centuries. Some alternative interpretations have suggested that Hy-Brasil could represent a lost landmass, a forgotten settlement, or evidence of ancient contact between distant cultures. These ideas remain speculative and lack strong supporting evidence, but they continue to attract interest because they connect with a larger mystery. How much of the human past has been lost? The ocean covers most of the Earth's surface, and much of its depths remain difficult to explore. Ancient coastlines have changed dramatically over thousands of years due to rising sea levels and geological shifts. Some landscapes that once existed are now underwater, hidden from modern observation. Could stories like Hy-Brasil preserve distant memories of places that changed or disappeared? Or is the island simply a powerful example of how legends can become woven into the fabric of history? The answer may never be completely certain. What makes Hy-Brasil fascinating is not only the question of whether the island existed, but what its story reveals about the human imagination. A place drawn on maps, described in stories and searched for by explorers became real in another way. It became part of humanity's collective journey into the unknown. The old maps remain, their faded lines showing an island that cannot be found. The legends remain, carrying memories of a mysterious land beyond the western horizon. And the ocean remains, vast and largely silent, holding countless secrets beneath its surface. Perhaps Hy-Brasil was only a reflection of ancient hopes and uncertainties. Perhaps it was inspired by something real that has since disappeared. Or perhaps it represents something else entirely, a reminder that even in an age of satellites and global maps, there are still mysteries that invite us to look beyond what we know. And as researchers continue studying ancient records, forgotten maps, and the changing landscapes of the past, one question remains. Was Hy-Brasil merely a legend created from imagination? Or does its story preserve a fragment of history that has not yet been uncovered, leaving behind the vanished island of Hy-Brasil, where legend and geography became intertwined? Our journey now returns to the physical remains of an ancient world hidden beneath the earth. Far from the familiar landscapes of China's great imperial cities, in the rugged hills of northern Shanxi province, a vast stone settlement waited silently for thousands of years. It was not recorded in the traditional histories of ancient China, and its existence was unknown to modern archaeology until the late 20th century. This is Shimao, rising from the edge of the Ordos Plateau, surrounded by dry valleys and windswept landscapes. The ruins of Shimao reveal one of the most extraordinary discoveries in East Asian archaeology. A massive stone city built more than 4,000 years ago. It challenges previous ideas about early Chinese civilization and raises questions about how much of humanity's ancient past remains hidden beneath forgotten landscapes. At first glance, the site appears like a natural formation of stone terraces and collapsed walls. But beneath the layers of earth are the remains of an enormous fortified settlement constructed around 2300 BC during the late Neolithic period. Long before the rise of China's famous dynasties, the people of Shimao created a city with towering walls, ritual spaces, defensive structures, and evidence of a complex society. The scale of Shimao is difficult to comprehend. The settlement covered an area of approximately 400 hectares, making it one of the largest known prehistoric cities in ancient China. Its outer walls were built from carefully arranged stone blocks, a remarkable achievement for a society traditionally associated with earlier forms of village life rather than monumental urban construction. The discovery of Shimao forced archaeologists to reconsider the development of early Chinese civilization. For many years, scholars focused heavily on the regions along the Yellow River as the primary centers of early state formation. Shimao revealed that advanced societies were also developing in areas previously considered less central to the story of ancient China. The city's location itself is intriguing. Shimao was built near the boundary between agricultural and pastoral landscapes, where different ways of life met. The surrounding environment was not an easy place for large settlements. Water resources were limited, and the climate could be challenging. Yet, the inhabitants transformed this landscape into a powerful center of human activity. Why did they choose this location? What made this place important enough to justify the construction of such a massive stone city? Archaeologists believe that Shimao was not simply a residential settlement. Its design suggests a society organized around authority, ritual, and defense. The city contained multiple layers of walls, elevated areas, and specialized structures that indicate social complexity. One of the most remarkable discoveries at Shimao was the presence of large numbers of jade objects. Jade held deep symbolic importance in ancient Chinese cultures and was often associated with status, spirituality, and power. The quantity of jade found at the site suggests that Shimao participated in extensive networks of exchange and that its leaders possessed significant influence. But perhaps the most mysterious discoveries were the stone carvings embedded within the walls. Researchers uncovered numerous carved stone faces and symbolic designs incorporated into the architecture. These images include human-like features, geometric patterns, and unusual artistic elements. Their purpose remains uncertain, but their presence suggests that the walls were not only defensive structures, they may also have carried religious or symbolic meaning. The city itself may have been designed as a statement of identity. Across many ancient cultures, architecture served more than practical purposes. Walls, temples, and monuments expressed beliefs about power, protection, and the relationship between humans and the unseen world. At Shimao, the boundary between defense and symbolism appears to have been deeply connected. The discoveries become even more unusual when considering evidence of ritual activity. Archaeologists have uncovered human remains and signs of ceremonial practices at the site. Some skulls appear to have been placed in specific locations, suggesting complex rituals connected to death, ancestors, or spiritual beliefs. These findings have led researchers to explore the possibility that Shimao was not only a political center, but also a major religious site. However, the exact meaning of these practices remains uncertain. Were these rituals connected to beliefs about ancestors? Were they associated with warfare or social control? Did they represent ceremonies performed by powerful groups seeking legitimacy? The answers are difficult to recover because the people of Shimao left behind no written records explaining their world. Like many prehistoric societies, they communicated through objects, architecture, and symbols rather than texts. Their city survives, but their voices have disappeared. The construction methods used at Shimao also raise fascinating questions. Building such an enormous stone settlement required organization, planning, and cooperation on a large scale. Workers needed to quarry stone, transport materials, and construct walls across difficult terrain. What kind of leadership coordinated this effort? How was labor organized before the development of the later Chinese states? For decades, researchers believed that complex societies in China emerged primarily during the Bronze Age with the rise of dynastic cultures. Shimao suggests that social complexity developed earlier and in more diverse ways than previously understood. The city appears to represent a society in transition, a community moving beyond simple settlement patterns toward more centralized forms of organization. Yet, the mystery of Shimao extends beyond its construction. Around 1800 BC, the city was abandoned. The reasons remain unclear. Environmental changes, shifting trade networks, political transformations, or internal conflicts may have contributed to its decline. But there is no single explanation that fully accounts for why such an extraordinary settlement eventually fell silent. What happened to the people who built Shimao? Did they migrate to other regions? Did their traditions influence later cultures? Did their achievements become absorbed into civilizations whose histories were recorded differently? The absence of written evidence leaves these questions open. Some researchers have suggested that Shimao may have played a role in the broader development of Chinese civilization, influencing later traditions of architecture, ritual, and political organization. Others emphasize that the site represents its own unique cultural achievement, one that should be understood on its own terms rather than only through later historical developments. The discovery of Shimao has also inspired more speculative interpretations. Some have wondered whether the city represents evidence of a forgotten advanced society that disappeared before written history. Others have suggested connections with distant cultures based on artistic similarities or unusual discoveries. These ideas remain debated and require stronger evidence before they can be accepted. Archaeology depends on careful comparisons, reliable dating, and multiple lines of information. A remarkable discovery does not necessarily mean a lost civilization. It may simply reveal that human societies were more diverse and creative than previously recognized. And that may be the most important lesson of Shimao. The ancient world was never a simple story of a few famous civilizations rising in isolation. Human history is filled with communities that experimented, adapted, and created remarkable achievements in places that were once overlooked. Shimao reminds us that history is constantly being rewritten, not because the past changes, but because new evidence reveals parts of it that were previously invisible. Standing among the ruins today, it is difficult not to imagine the world that once existed there. Stone walls rising above the landscape, workers carrying materials through the city, rituals taking place in hidden chambers, leaders gathering within fortified spaces overlooking the surrounding valleys. A civilization existed here with its own ambitions, beliefs, and struggles. Then, gradually, it disappeared. The stones remained buried while centuries passed above them. The memory of Shimao faded until archaeologists uncovered its remains and revealed a chapter of human history that had been missing. Yet, even now, the site does not provide every answer. The carved faces on the walls remain silent. The rituals remain partly understood. The reasons behind the city's creation and abandonment continue to be studied. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Shimao is not only what archaeologists have discovered, but what may still remain hidden beneath the surrounding landscape. If one forgotten city of this scale could remain unknown for thousands of years, how many other lost settlements are still waiting beneath the earth? And as researchers continue exploring the ancient landscapes of China and beyond, one question remains: how many forgotten chapters of human history are still buried, waiting for the moment when they finally reveal their secrets? Leaving behind the forgotten cities and lost landscapes of ancient civilizations, our journey now turns toward a quieter mystery, one hidden not beneath the desert sands or inside abandoned ruins, but standing alone beneath the windswept skies of the northern islands of Scotland. Here, among the rugged hills and open valleys of Hoy in the Orkney archipelago, a single block of red sandstone holds a secret carved into its very heart. This is the Dwarfie Stane. At first, the monument appears almost ordinary, a massive boulder resting within a remote landscape shaped by glaciers, wind, and time. But the closer we look, the more unusual it becomes. A narrow opening has been carefully cut into one side of the stone, leading into a small chamber carved entirely from the rock itself. Inside are two rectangular recesses, shaped like beds or resting places, creating a structure unlike any other known prehistoric monument in Britain. For thousands of years, this solitary stone has remained exposed to the harsh northern climate. Storms have crossed the island, landscapes have changed, and generations of people have come and gone. Yet the Dwarfie Stane has endured, preserving evidence of a mysterious act of craftsmanship carried out by people whose names and intentions have been lost to time. The monument is generally dated to the Neolithic period, a time when communities across the British Isles were developing farming, building permanent settlements, and creating large ceremonial structures. Around 3000 BC, the people of Orkney were already constructing remarkable monuments, including stone circles, settlements, and burial chambers that reveal a complex understanding of community and ritual. The Dwarfie Stane belongs to this same ancient world. But unlike many prehistoric monuments built by arranging stones together, this structure was created by removing material from a single natural block. Instead of transporting massive stones across the landscape, its builders transformed the stone itself into an enclosed space. This required patience, planning, and a clear purpose. Using stone tools, the creators would have slowly carved into the sandstone surface, striking away fragments over countless hours. The process would have been physically demanding, requiring not only strength, but also a detailed understanding of how the stone could be shaped. Why dedicate so much effort to create such a small chamber? The most common archaeological interpretation is that the Dwarfie Stane was a burial monument. The interior design resembles aspects of Neolithic chambered tombs found elsewhere in Orkney and northern Europe. The carved recesses inside may have been intended to hold human remains or serve as symbolic resting places connected to the dead. In many prehistoric cultures, burial sites were not simply locations for the disposal of bodies. They were places where communities maintained relationships with their ancestors. The dead remained part of the social and spiritual world, and monuments provided a connection between past and present. If this interpretation is correct, the Dwarfie Stane may have been a place where ancient people remembered their ancestors and performed ceremonies connected to death and renewal. However, the monument does not perfectly match other known tombs. It lacks the long entrance passages and larger chambers commonly associated with many Neolithic burial structures. Its compact design raises further questions about its purpose. Was it created for a single important individual? Was it used for a small group? Or did it serve a function that modern researchers have not yet identified? The uncertainty surrounding the Dwarfie Stane is part of what makes it so fascinating. The landscape around the monument adds another layer to its mystery. Hy is one of the most dramatic islands in Orkney, with towering cliffs, open moorlands, and a sense of isolation created by the surrounding sea. In such an environment, a carved stone chamber would have carried a powerful presence. For the people who created it, the location may have been significant. Ancient communities often selected places based on their relationship with the natural world. Mountains, rivers, coastlines, and unusual geological formations could hold symbolic importance. A large stone, standing within an open landscape, may have been viewed as more than a simple object. It may have been considered a meaningful feature of the world around them. Standing before the Dwarfie Stane thousands of years ago, an individual would have encountered something both familiar and mysterious. A natural stone transformed by human effort into a hidden space. What thoughts would have surrounded such a place? Was it a doorway between the world of the living and the world of ancestors? Was it a location for ceremonies connected to seasonal changes? Was the act of carving the stone itself considered a sacred process? Without written records, these questions remain unanswered. Later generations developed their own explanations for the monument. The name Dwarfie Stane comes from local folklore, reflecting the belief that unusual ancient structures were sometimes connected to mythical beings. Stories of dwarfs, giants, and hidden creatures became part of the cultural memory surrounding many prehistoric sites across Europe. These legends do not reveal the original purpose of the monument, but they demonstrate something important. Even centuries after its creation, people continued to recognize that the Dwarfie Stane was unusual. It inspired curiosity. Over time, the stone attracted visitors, explorers, and historians who attempted to understand its origins. Some later theories proposed that the chamber might have had astronomical or ceremonial functions. Others wondered whether it was connected to forgotten traditions that existed before written history. Such ideas remain speculative, as there is limited evidence to support them. Archaeology relies on physical traces, and while the Dwarfie Stane provides clues, it does not provide a complete explanation. Yet, the mystery remains valuable because it reminds us how much of the ancient world has disappeared. The people who carved the Dwarfie Stane left behind their work, but not their voices. They gave us a structure, but not the story behind it. We can study the tools they used, compare the monument with others, and examine the surrounding landscape. But the personal meaning behind the stone remains hidden. This is a recurring challenge in archaeology. Ancient monuments often survive while the beliefs that created them vanish. A structure may remain for thousands of years, but the emotions, rituals, and ideas connected to it can disappear within only a few generations. The Dwarfie Stane represents this gap between what we can observe and what we can truly understand. It shows that prehistoric communities were capable of extraordinary effort and symbolic thinking. These were not people simply reacting to survival challenges. They were creating spaces connected to memory, identity, and perhaps their understanding of existence itself. The monument has survived storms, erosion, and centuries of change. It has watched kingdoms rise and fall, languages disappear, and human societies transform. Still, it remains. A small chamber carved into a massive stone, standing quietly on an island at the edge of the Atlantic. Perhaps the greatest mystery of the Dwarfie Stane is not what we know about it, but what has been lost. The stone tells us that someone came here thousands of years ago and believed this place was worth changing forever. But why? What was the meaning behind the hidden chamber inside the rock? What memories or beliefs were carried into this ancient space? And what other secrets might still remain hidden within the landscapes of the distant past? The Dwarfie Stane continues to stand as a silent witness, inviting us to look closer, question deeper, and wonder what forgotten stories may still be waiting beneath the surface of history. Leaving behind the solitary silence of the Dwarfie Stane, our journey now moves eastward toward a different kind of ancient mystery, a place where the landscape itself appears to have been carefully designed. Across the vast grasslands of the southern Ural region, where the horizon stretches endlessly beneath open skies, the remains of an ancient settlement reveal a civilization that was far more organized than previously imagined. This is Arkaim. Hidden beneath the soil of the Chelyabinsk region in modern-day Russia, Arkaim remained unknown for thousands of years, until its discovery in the late 20th century. What appeared at first to be an ordinary patch of land was revealed to contain the remains of a carefully planned circular settlement dating back to around 2000 BC. The discovery challenged assumptions about prehistoric societies in the Eurasian steppe. Long considered a region dominated mainly by mobile communities, the area around Arkaim revealed evidence of advanced planning, architecture, metallurgy, and social organization. From above, the layout of Arkaim is one of its most striking features. The settlement was built in a circular design, with two large rings of structures surrounding a central area. Defensive walls, narrow entrances, and carefully arranged houses created a pattern that suggests deliberate planning rather than gradual development. The settlement was not simply a collection of homes placed randomly across the landscape. It appears to have been designed as a unified structure, where each part served a specific purpose. But who built Arkaim and why? Archaeologists associate the site with the Sintashta culture, a Bronze Age society that existed across parts of the Eurasian steppe. These communities are known for their metalworking skills, fortified settlements, and some of the earliest evidence of horse-drawn chariots. The people of Arkaim lived during a period of major transformation. Across Eurasia, societies were developing new technologies, expanding trade networks, and creating more complex forms of organization. Arkaim represents one example of how communities adapted to changing environments and opportunities. Inside the settlement, researchers discovered evidence of houses, workshops, storage areas, and furnaces used for metal production. These findings suggest that Arkaim was not only a place of residence, but also a center of craftsmanship and industry. The ability to produce bronze tools and weapons required specialized knowledge. It involved gathering raw materials, controlling high temperatures, and passing technical skills from one generation to another. Yet, the most fascinating aspect of Arkaim may be its design. The circular arrangement has led some researchers and enthusiasts to wonder whether the settlement reflected deeper symbolic ideas. The alignment of certain features with natural cycles, including the movement of the sun, has attracted attention from those interested in ancient astronomy and ritual landscapes. Some interpretations suggest that Arkaim may have functioned partly as an astronomical observatory or ceremonial center. However, while the builders clearly understood their environment and carefully planned their settlement, direct evidence proving a specific astronomical purpose remains limited. Still, the possibility raises intriguing questions. Did the people of Arkaim design their city only for practical reasons, or did the structure also reflect their understanding of the universe around them? Ancient societies often connected architecture with broader beliefs. Settlements, temples, and monuments could represent relationships between humans, nature, and the forces they believed shaped existence. A carefully organized circular city may have carried meanings beyond defense and daily life. The discovery of Arkaim also created interest because of its connection to early Indo-Iranian cultures. Some researchers have explored possible links between the Sintashta culture and later traditions described in ancient texts. These connections remain subjects of scholarly discussion, with many details still uncertain. What is clear is that Arkaim provides evidence of a sophisticated Bronze Age society that was capable of remarkable achievements. The settlement's location also raises questions about its eventual abandonment. Archaeological evidence suggests that Arkaim was occupied for a relatively short period before it was deliberately left behind and possibly burned. Why would a community invest so much effort into building such a carefully planned settlement, only to abandon it? Several explanations have been proposed. Changes in climate, resource pressures, social shifts, or migration patterns may have influenced the decision. Some researchers believe the settlement was abandoned as part of broader movements across the steppe, but the exact reasons remain unknown. The empty structures of Arkaim preserve evidence of life, but not the final moments of the people who lived there. The walls reveal how they built, worked, and organized their community, but they do not explain what led them to leave. Over time, the site disappeared beneath the landscape until its rediscovery in the 20th century. Modern development plans nearly erased it before archaeologists recognized its importance and began investigating the remains. The story of Arkaim is therefore also a story of rediscovery, a reminder that important chapters of human history can remain hidden in plain sight. Like many ancient sites, Arkaim has attracted both scientific research and more speculative interpretations. Some have described it as a lost city of advanced knowledge or a mysterious center of ancient wisdom. These ideas often go beyond the available evidence, but they reflect the fascination created by a place that challenges expectations. The true significance of Arkaim may be even more interesting. It demonstrates that prehistoric communities were capable of planning, innovation, and complex social organization long before many traditional histories suggested. The settlement stands as evidence that the ancient steppe was not an empty wilderness. It was a landscape filled with people who created technologies, built communities, and developed their own understanding of the world. Today, Arkaim remains a place where archaeology and mystery exist side by side. The circular walls, ancient furnaces, and carefully arranged structures continue to reveal more about the people who built them, yet many questions remain unanswered. What beliefs shaped the design of this unusual city? Why did its builders choose this location? And what other forgotten settlements may still lie beneath the vast landscapes of Eurasia, waiting to be discovered? Arkaim continues to stand as a reminder that the ancient world was far more complex than we often imagine. Beneath the quiet fields of the Ural region, an ancient city still holds fragments of a story that has not yet been fully understood, and perhaps more secrets remain hidden within its silent circles, leaving behind the circular mysteries of Arkaim, where ancient builders shaped stone and earth into a carefully planned settlement. Our journey now moves toward another discovery, where the voices of the distant past were preserved in an unexpected form. Deep within the ancient landscape of China, beneath layers of soil and forgotten ruins, thousands of fragments reveal questions asked by people who lived more than 3,000 years ago. These are the Yinxu oracle bones. In the quiet fields near Anyang in Henan province, the remains of Yinxu mark the final capital of the Shang dynasty, one of China's earliest recorded civilizations. Once a powerful center of royal authority, the city contained palaces, workshops, burial sites, and ritual spaces. But among its most extraordinary discoveries were not grand buildings or weapons of war. They were small pieces of bone and shell covered with mysterious inscriptions. These objects became some of the earliest known examples of Chinese writing. The oracle bones were mainly created during the late Shang period, around 1200 BC, when rulers sought answers about matters that affected their kingdom. They were made from animal bones, especially ox shoulder blades, as well as turtle shells. Through a process known as scapulomancy, specialists would create small hollows in the surface, apply heat, and observe the cracks that appeared. These cracks were interpreted as messages from the spiritual world. The questions carved onto the bones covered many aspects of life. Kings asked about harvests, weather, military campaigns, illnesses, hunting expeditions, and the success of important events. The inscriptions recorded concerns that were both deeply personal and connected to the survival of an entire kingdom. A ruler preparing for war might ask whether an attack would succeed. A king worried about drought might ask whether rain would arrive. A family concerned about health might seek guidance from ancestors. The oracle bones provide a rare glimpse into the thoughts of people who lived thousands of years ago. Unlike many archaeological discoveries that reveal only objects or structures, these inscriptions preserve fragments of actual communication. They show what ancient rulers feared, what they hoped for, and how they understood their place within the universe. But the mystery of the oracle bones goes beyond their content. The Shang people believed that communication with ancestors was essential for maintaining balance between the human world and the forces beyond it. Their kings were not only political leaders, but also religious figures responsible for connecting society with the spiritual realm. The bones reveal a worldview where natural events, political decisions, and supernatural influences were deeply connected. Why did the Shang believe that ancestors could provide answers? How did they interpret the relationship between the living and the dead? And how much of their spiritual system remains hidden behind the symbols carved into these ancient surfaces? The discovery of the oracle bones also transformed our understanding of Chinese history. Before these inscriptions were found, knowledge of the Shang dynasty came largely from later historical texts written centuries afterward. Some scholars questioned how much of those accounts reflected actual events. The oracle bones provided direct evidence that the Shang dynasty existed and offered details about its rulers, customs, and society. They became a bridge between legend and recorded history. The inscriptions also revealed something remarkable about the development of writing. The characters carved into the bones are early forms of Chinese script, and many can be connected to later Chinese characters used throughout history. They represent one of the longest continuous writing traditions in the world. Yet, despite their importance, many mysteries remain. Thousands of oracle bones have been discovered, containing hundreds of thousands of individual characters. While many have been successfully interpreted, others remain uncertain or completely unknown. Some symbols appear only rarely, leaving researchers with incomplete clues about their meaning. Each undeciphered character represents a small piece of a lost conversation. The oracle bones also raise questions about what may have been lost. The surviving examples come mainly from royal rituals, meaning they provide a view of society from the perspective of the ruling class. The voices of ordinary farmers, craftsmen, and workers are far less visible. What did everyday life look like beyond the palace and ritual centers? What beliefs were shared by common people? What stories were passed through generations without ever being written down? The bones preserve some answers, but they also reveal the limits of what can be recovered. Over time, the Shang dynasty declined, eventually replaced by the Zhou dynasty around 1046 BC. The political system changed, but the importance of ancestors, ritual, and writing continued to influence later Chinese civilization. The oracle bones survived because they were buried and preserved beneath the earth. Many were discovered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries after local people encountered unusual inscribed fragments that were initially misunderstood. What was once considered mysterious material used in traditional medicine became recognized as one of the most important archaeological discoveries in Chinese history. Today, the oracle bones remain among the most valuable records of the ancient world. They are not simply artifacts. They are messages sent across thousands of years. They reveal a civilization searching for answers about uncertain futures, using rituals and symbols to understand forces beyond human control. But perhaps the most fascinating question is not only what the oracle bones tell us, but what they cannot tell us. How many questions were asked that were never preserved? How many beliefs, traditions, and personal stories disappeared before they could be recorded? And how many other ancient voices remain silent, waiting beneath the earth for someone to discover them? The Yinxu oracle bones continue to remind us that history is not only written in monuments and kingdoms. Sometimes it survives in the smallest fragments, pieces of bone carrying the hopes, fears, and unanswered questions of people who lived thousands of years before us, leaving behind the ancient inscriptions carved into the oracle bones of Yinxu. Our journey now moves toward another fragile message from the distant past, one that survived not in stone or metal, but on a small wooden object preserved beneath the waters of a prehistoric settlement. In the quiet landscape of northern Greece, where mountains surround a once thriving lakeside community, a mysterious artifact emerged carrying symbols whose meaning remains uncertain. This is the Dispilio Tablet. Discovered near the modern village of Dispilio, on the shores of Lake Castoria in western Macedonia, the tablet was found during archaeological excavations of an ancient lakeside settlement. The site reveals the remains of a Neolithic community that existed more than 7,000 years ago, around 5,500 BC, when people built homes above and around the water using wooden platforms and carefully organized structures. For centuries, the settlement remained hidden beneath layers of mud and sediment at the bottom of the lake. The environment that once supported human life eventually became the very thing that preserved traces of that vanished world. Among the discoveries made at Dispilio was a small wooden tablet covered with engraved markings. Its surface contained lines and symbols arranged in a deliberate pattern, suggesting that the markings were created intentionally rather than being simple decoration or accidental damage. The artifact immediately attracted attention. Could these symbols represent one of the earliest examples of human writing in Europe? Or were they something different? A system of signs, ownership marks, counting symbols, or another form of communication that has been lost to time? The question remains unresolved. The Dispilio Tablet is generally dated to around 5,300 BC, making it far older than many known writing systems from the ancient world. The earliest confirmed writing traditions, such as those developed in Mesopotamia thousands of years later, emerged in societies with complex administrative systems and urban centers. The people of Dispilio lived in a very different world. They were farmers, fishers, and craftspeople who built settlements along the edge of a lake. Their homes were constructed from wood, reeds, and clay. They produced tools, pottery, and everyday objects that reveal a community adapted to its environment. Yet, the presence of engraved symbols suggests that they may have also developed ways of recording information. The meaning of these marks is the central mystery. Some researchers have proposed that the tablet may represent an early form of symbolic communication. The markings could have been used to record numbers, events, ownership, or information connected to daily life. Others suggest that the symbols may have had ritual or cultural significance rather than functioning as writing in the modern sense. The difficulty is that there is no known language system from this period that can be used for comparison. Without additional examples or a larger collection of similar inscriptions, interpretation remains extremely challenging. A single artifact can reveal possibilities, but it rarely provides a complete answer. The discovery of the Dispilio Tablet also raises broader questions about the origins of human communication. For a long time, writing was viewed as a development that appeared only after the creation of cities and complex states. However, archaeological discoveries around the world have shown that humans used symbols long before formal writing systems emerged. People marked objects, decorated tools, created patterns, and recorded information in ways that may have carried meaning within their communities. Perhaps the Dispilio Tablet belongs to this earlier stage, a moment when humans were experimenting with ways to preserve knowledge beyond memory. What information did the creator want to save? Was it a practical record connected to everyday activities? A symbol of identity? A message intended for others in the community? or something connected to beliefs and rituals. The wooden material itself adds another layer of mystery. Wood rarely survives thousands of years because it normally decays quickly. The preservation of the Dispilio Tablet was possible because it remained protected in the waterlogged environment of the lake, where limited oxygen slowed decomposition. Without these unusual conditions, the artifact would likely have disappeared completely. This reminds us how incomplete our understanding of the past can be. Archaeological evidence depends not only on human activity, but also on chance. A lost object may survive or vanish depending on where it falls, how it is buried, and what natural conditions surround it. How many other messages from prehistoric communities have disappeared forever? The settlement at Dispilio provides a glimpse into a sophisticated Neolithic world. Archaeologists uncovered houses, tools, pottery, and evidence of organized community life. The inhabitants were not simply surviving from day to day. They were building homes, developing traditions, and creating objects that reflected their relationship with the world around them. The tablet may represent another part of that story, the desire to communicate, organize, and preserve information. Some more speculative interpretations have suggested that the Dispilio Tablet could represent a forgotten writing tradition that existed before known historical records. While this possibility remains debated and lacks enough evidence to confirm, it reflects a genuine archaeological question. How early did humans begin creating systems of symbolic expression? The answer may be more complicated than a simple beginning point. Human communication likely developed gradually, through many stages of symbols, signs, and shared meanings. The transition from images and markings to formal writing was not an overnight invention, but a long process shaped by countless communities. The Dispilio Tablet may represent one small moment within that much larger journey. Today, the artifact remains a fascinating reminder of how much remains unknown about prehistoric societies. It does not provide a clear message that can be easily translated, but perhaps its greatest importance lies in the questions it creates. The symbols carved into the wood connect us to people who lived thousands of years ago, people who faced different challenges but shared a similar desire to leave something behind. A mark on a tablet, a symbol on a surface, a message waiting for another person to understand. And still, the mystery remains. What did the people of Dispilio intend to communicate? Were these markings the beginning of a forgotten language, or were they symbols with a meaning we have not yet learned to recognize? The wooden tablet rests as a quiet reminder that beneath the waters of ancient landscapes, countless stories may still be waiting, preserved, hidden, and ready to challenge what we think we know about the earliest chapters of human history. Leaving behind the fragile wooden markings of the Dispilio Tablet, our journey now moves toward a landscape where mystery is carved not into a small object, but into towering monuments that rise above the earth like messages from a forgotten age. In the northern highlands of Ethiopia, surrounded by rugged mountains and ancient pathways of trade, stand enormous stone pillars that have challenged historians, archaeologists, and travelers for centuries. These are the Axum Stelae. Located in the ancient city of Axum, these towering stone monuments represent one of Africa's most remarkable achievements from the ancient world. Carved from single blocks of granite and rising high above the surrounding landscape, the stelae were created by the people of the Aksumite Empire, a powerful civilization that flourished in the region between approximately the 1st and 7th centuries AD. The largest standing stela reaches more than 20 meters into the sky, covered with carefully carved details that resemble the architecture of a towering multi-story building. False doors, windows, and decorative elements are carved into the stone surface, creating the impression of a structure transformed into a monument. But the stelae were never intended to function as buildings. They were symbols. The people of Axum created these monuments as markers of importance, likely connected to royal burials and elite individuals. They stood within a landscape of tombs and underground chambers, forming a connection between the visible world above and the hidden spaces beneath the earth. Why did the Axumites choose such an unusual form of remembrance? Across many ancient cultures, monumental structures were created to preserve memory. The size and craftsmanship of a monument could reflect the status of the person it honored and the power of the society that created it. The Axum Stelae demonstrate that the Axumite Empire possessed advanced engineering skills, organized labor, and access to skilled craftsmen. Carving and transporting such enormous stones would have required extraordinary effort. The granite had to be extracted, shaped, transported, and raised into position without the modern machinery available today. How did ancient builders accomplish this? The answer likely lies in careful planning, specialized knowledge, and cooperation among large groups of workers. Yet, the exact methods remain partly uncertain, adding to the fascination surrounding these monuments. The stelae also reveal the international connections of Axum. At its height, the Axumite Empire was a major power involved in trade networks linking Africa, Arabia, the Mediterranean world, and beyond. Its merchants exchanged goods such as ivory, gold, and agricultural products, connecting distant regions through maritime and overland routes. This raises another intriguing question. How did a civilization in the Horn of Africa develop such monumental architecture and become a major player in ancient global history? The answer lies in the complexity of Axum itself. It was not an isolated kingdom, but a society shaped by exchange, innovation, and cultural interaction. The mysteries of the Axum Stelae, however, extend beyond their construction. Their original meanings are not fully understood. While archaeologists generally interpret them as funerary monuments, the symbolic details carved into the stone may have carried deeper religious or political messages. The false doors and window designs appear to imitate real buildings, but what exactly did they represent? Were they symbolic entrances to another world, reflections of royal palaces, or expressions of beliefs about power and eternity? The stones remained silent. Later, history added another layer to their story. In the 20th century, one of the largest stelae was removed from Axum and transported to Europe before eventually being returned to Ethiopia. Its journey became part of a wider discussion about cultural heritage and the importance of preserving ancient monuments in their original landscapes. Today, the Axum Stelae continue to stand as reminders of a civilization that shaped the history of Africa and the ancient world. They represent engineering, artistry, and the desire of humans to leave behind something that could survive beyond a single lifetime. Yet, many questions remain unanswered. What inspired the Axumite builders to create these enormous stone monuments? What beliefs guided the people who carved them? And what other secrets may still lie beneath the ancient city of Axum, waiting to reveal more about a civilization whose achievements were once overlooked? The stelae remain silent witnesses to a forgotten era, standing beneath the Ethiopian sky and inviting us to wonder what stories are still hidden within their ancient stone surfaces. Leaving behind the towering stone monuments of Axum, where ancient builders carved their memory into the landscape, our journey now moves toward another extraordinary creation from a much earlier age. Along the rugged coastline of Brittany, France, where the Atlantic winds sweep across rocky shores and ancient fields, a massive stone structure rises quietly from the earth. It is not a fortress, not a palace, and not a place built for the living. This is Barnenez. Often described as one of the oldest monumental structures in Europe, the Barnenez cairn is a vast prehistoric burial monument constructed thousands of years before the famous pyramids of Egypt. Hidden on the Kernelahen Peninsula overlooking the sea, this enormous stone mound represents a remarkable achievement of Neolithic engineering and offers a rare glimpse into the beliefs of communities that lived more than 6,000 years ago. At first glance, Barnenez appears to be a long hill covered in grass and vegetation, but beneath its surface lies a carefully built structure composed of thousands of stones arranged into chambers, passages, and walls. The monument stretches for more than 70 meters and contains multiple internal chambers connected by narrow corridors. It was not created by accident, it was planned. The earliest construction of Barnenez began around 4,800 BC, making it older than many of the ancient monuments that dominate popular history. At a time when farming communities were spreading across Europe, people along the Atlantic coast were already organizing large collective projects that required coordination, labor, and a shared purpose. But what inspired them to build such a massive monument? The answer appears to be connected to the relationship between the living and the dead. Archaeologists classify Barnenez as a passage grave, a type of Neolithic burial monument found in parts of Western Europe. Inside the structure, long corridors lead to chambers where human remains and ritual objects were placed. These spaces were likely connected to ancestral traditions, allowing communities to maintain a symbolic relationship with those who had come before them. The monument was not simply a tomb, it was a statement. The effort required to construct Barnenez suggests that it held deep importance. Thousands of tons of stone were collected, transported, and carefully arranged. The builders selected specific materials, including granite and dolerite, shaping the monument layer by layer. Without modern machinery, how did these communities accomplish such an enormous task? The most likely explanation involves organized communal labor. Neolithic societies were capable of remarkable cooperation, especially when projects carried religious or social significance. Building a monument like Barnenez may have strengthened community identity, bringing people together around shared beliefs and traditions. Yet, the exact meaning of the monument remains uncertain. The people who built Barnenez left no written records explaining their intentions. Their beliefs must be reconstructed through architecture, artifacts, and comparisons with other prehistoric sites. The chambers inside the cairn offer clues, but they do not reveal the complete story. Were the burial chambers intended only for elite individuals? Did they serve as places where communities gathered to honor ancestors? Were they connected to beliefs about the journey after death? These questions continue to surround the monument. The location of Barnenez may also have been significant. Positioned near the Atlantic coastline, the cairn overlooks a landscape shaped by tides, storms, and changing seasons. Many prehistoric monuments were carefully placed in relation to their surroundings, suggesting that natural features may have carried symbolic meaning. The sea, in particular, may have played an important role in the worldview of coastal communities. It was both a source of survival and a powerful, unpredictable force. For ancient people, landscapes were not merely physical spaces. They could represent connections between the human world and forces beyond human control. Over time, Barnenez experienced both preservation and damage. Like many ancient monuments, it was not always recognized for its historical importance. In the 20th century, parts of the cairn were damaged during quarrying activity before its archaeological significance became fully understood. What was once seen as a simple source of stone was revealed to be one of Europe's oldest surviving monuments. This rediscovery changed how researchers viewed prehistoric societies. Barnenez demonstrated that early farming communities were capable of creating complex architecture long before the rise of famous ancient civilizations. It challenged the idea that monumental construction began only with cities, kings, and written history. Instead, it showed that ordinary communities thousands of years ago were already capable of creating structures designed to outlast generations. Some alternative interpretations have suggested that monuments like Barnenez may have had additional purposes connected to astronomy, seasonal cycles, or forgotten rituals. While prehistoric communities certainly observed natural patterns and celestial events, direct evidence for specific astronomical functions at Barnenez remains limited. Still, the possibility reflects the larger mystery of Neolithic monuments. They often seem to exist at the boundary between practical construction and symbolic expression. Barnenez is a place built from stone, but shaped by ideas. It represents memory, community, and humanity's desire to create something that survives beyond a single lifetime. The people who carried those stones into place are gone, their language forgotten, and their traditions transformed by thousands of years of change. But their monument remains. The chambers are quiet now. The corridors no longer echo with ancient ceremonies. Yet the structure continues to raise questions about the minds of the people who created it. Why did they choose this location? What stories were connected to those buried within its chambers? And what other secrets may still remain hidden beneath the layers of stone and earth? Barnenez stands as a silent witness to one of humanity's earliest attempts to shape the landscape with meaning. And as archaeologists continue studying the ancient monuments of Europe, this enormous stone mound continues to remind us that the distant past still holds mysteries waiting to be uncovered. The significance of Barnenez extends far beyond its impressive age. It represents a turning point in the story of human civilization, demonstrating that long before the emergence of powerful kingdoms or written records, prehistoric communities were already capable of organizing large-scale construction projects that demanded vision, planning, and collective effort. Every stone placed within the cairn reflects not only physical labor, but also a shared belief that certain places deserve to endure beyond the lifetimes of those who built them. Archaeological investigations have revealed that Barnenez was not constructed in a single phase. Instead, the monument developed gradually over time, with new sections added by successive generations. This layered history suggests that the cairn remained an important ceremonial site for centuries, rather than serving a single event or burial. Each expansion may have reflected the changing needs of the community, honoring new ancestors while preserving the memory of those already laid to rest. In this way, Barnenez became a living monument, continuously reshaped by the people who maintained their connection to the past. Inside its stone chambers, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts including pottery fragments, polished stone axes, and other objects placed alongside the dead. These discoveries hint at rituals that viewed burial as more than the end of life. The inclusion of carefully crafted possessions suggests that the deceased continued to hold significance within the community, perhaps believed to journey into another realm, or remain spiritually connected with the living. Although the exact beliefs of these Neolithic people can never be fully reconstructed, their actions reveal a profound respect for memory, ancestry, and continuity across generations. The architecture of Barnenez itself is remarkably sophisticated. Narrow passageways lead into carefully designed burial chambers constructed with massive stone slabs fitted together with surprising precision. Some chambers feature engraved symbols carved into the stones, including simple geometric shapes, arcs, and axe-like motifs, whose meanings remain uncertain. Whether these carvings represented religious symbols, clan identities, protective signs, or artistic expression is still debated. Like so many prehistoric markings across Europe, they remind us that symbolic communication flourished long before the appearance of written language. The surrounding landscape may also have played a crucial role in the monument's significance. Standing on a peninsula overlooking the sea, Barnenez commands wide views of the coastline and surrounding countryside. For the communities who built it, this elevated position may have linked the monument to both land and water, two environments essential for survival. The changing tides, the movement of the sun, and the rhythms of the seasons would have shaped daily life. And it is possible that the monument's placement reflected these natural cycles, even if its precise purpose cannot now be confirmed. Barnenez belongs to a much broader tradition of megalithic architecture that stretches along the Atlantic coast of Europe. Similar passage graves, standing stones, and stone circles appear in regions including Ireland, Britain, Spain, and Portugal, suggesting that distant communities shared certain architectural ideas or ceremonial practices. Whether these similarities resulted from direct contact, cultural exchange, or parallel development remains an active field of research. Whatever the explanation, they reveal that prehistoric Europe was far more interconnected than once believed, with ideas traveling across landscapes long before recorded history. The survival of Barnenez is itself something of a miracle. During the 20th century, quarrying operations removed sections of the monument before archaeologists recognized its extraordinary importance. Had the destruction continued for only a little longer, one of Europe's oldest architectural masterpieces might have disappeared forever. Fortunately, excavation and conservation efforts preserved what remained, allowing researchers to study the structure in detail and ensuring that future generations could appreciate its remarkable history. Modern archaeological techniques continue to deepen our understanding of the cairn. Radiocarbon dating has refined estimates of its construction, while geological studies have traced the origins of the stones used by its builders. Digital mapping and three-dimensional modeling now allow researchers to reconstruct damaged sections and better understand the monument's original appearance. These scientific advances demonstrate how new technology can breathe fresh life into ancient discoveries, revealing details that earlier generations could never have observed. Leaving behind the ancient stone chambers of Barnenez, where Neolithic communities carved spaces for memory and ritual, our journey now moves toward a Mediterranean island where another remarkable monument has survived for thousands of years. On the quiet landscape of Menorca, Spain, surrounded by dry fields, scattered vegetation, and the endless light of the Balearic sun, a strange stone structure rises with the appearance of a ship frozen in time. This is the Naveta des Tudons. Built during the Bronze Age, around 1200 BC, the Naveta des Tudons is one of the most unique prehistoric monuments in the Mediterranean. Unlike the massive burial mounds of mainland Europe or the towering stones of ancient ceremonial sites, this structure has a distinctive shape. Narrow at the top, wider at the base, and resembling an overturned boat resting on the land. Its name, Naveta, comes from its resemblance to a small ship or vessel. But this stone construction was never meant to travel across the sea. It was created for the dead. Located near the western side of Menorca, the monument is believed to have served as a collective burial chamber for an ancient community known as the Talaiotic culture. Inside, archaeologists discovered human remains belonging to multiple individuals, along with objects associated with funerary practices. The structure itself reveals impressive knowledge of stone construction. Large limestone blocks were carefully arranged without mortar, relying on precise placement and balance to create a durable monument that has endured for more than 3,000 years. How did Bronze Age builders achieve such accuracy without modern tools? The answer likely lies in generations of experience, careful observation of materials, and a deep understanding of construction techniques. The people who created the Naveta des Tudons were not simply stacking stones. They were creating a lasting connection between their community and their ancestors. The interior of the monument consists of 2 levels. The lower chamber was used for burials, while the upper space may have served a symbolic or practical function connected to the rituals surrounding the dead. Archaeological discoveries suggest that bodies were placed inside over time, creating a shared resting place for members of the community. This raises important questions about the society that built it. Who were the people whose remains were placed within these walls? What beliefs shaped their understanding of death? And why did they choose to create such a carefully designed structure to preserve the memory of those who had passed away? The Naveta des Tudons belongs to a wider tradition of prehistoric monuments found across Minorca. The island contains numerous ancient structures, including stone towers, settlements, and ceremonial sites that reveal a complex Bronze Age society. These communities lived in a world where architecture, landscape, and belief were deeply connected. Their monuments were not separate from daily life. They were expressions of identity, tradition, and social organization. The ship-like shape of the Naveta has inspired many interpretations. Some researchers believe the design may have symbolized a journey, perhaps reflecting beliefs about the transition from life to death. Others see the shape as a practical development of local building traditions rather than a deliberate symbol. The original meaning remains uncertain. Ancient monuments often leave behind physical evidence but not the thoughts and emotions that guided their creators. A structure can tell us how it was built, when it existed, and what materials were used, but it cannot fully reveal the hopes, fears, and beliefs of the people who stood before it thousands of years ago. The survival of the Naveta des Tudons is itself remarkable. Exposed to centuries of changing weather, human activity, and shifting societies, the monument has remained largely intact. Its preservation allows modern researchers to study a civilization that left behind no written explanations. Today, it stands as one of Minorca's most important archaeological landmarks, and a reminder that prehistoric communities across the Mediterranean were capable of extraordinary achievements. Yet, the mystery surrounding it remains. Was the Naveta simply a burial place, or did it represent something deeper about the relationship between the living and the dead? Did its unusual shape carry a symbolic message that has been forgotten? And what other stories might still be hidden within the ancient stones scattered across Minorca? The Naveta des Tudons continues to stand silently beneath the Mediterranean sky, a monument built by people who disappeared long ago, but whose questions, traditions, and memories remain carved into the stone. The discovery and study of the Naveta des Tudons have gradually transformed our understanding of prehistoric Minorca. Far from being an isolated monument, the Naveta forms part of an extensive archaeological landscape that preserves the legacy of a society with remarkable architectural skill and social organization. Across the island, archaeologists have identified numerous settlements, defensive structures, sanctuaries, and burial monuments that together reveal a vibrant Bronze Age culture capable of adapting to the unique environment of the Balearic Islands while developing traditions unlike those found elsewhere in Europe. Excavations inside the Naveta des Tudons uncovered the remains of dozens of individuals, indicating that the monument served as a collective burial place over many generations, rather than the tomb of a single ruler or family. Alongside the human remains were pottery vessels, personal ornaments, bronze objects, and carefully crafted bone artifacts that appear to have accompanied the deceased. These discoveries suggest that burial rituals were carried out with great care, and that the community attached deep importance to honoring those who had passed away. Each interment likely reinforced the connection between the living and their ancestors, strengthening bonds that extended across generations. The careful design of the monument also reflects an impressive understanding of engineering principles. Massive limestone blocks were selected, shaped, and positioned with extraordinary precision, creating stable walls that have remained standing for more than 3,000 years without the use of mortar. The builders relied entirely on the weight, balance, and careful placement of each stone. Every course contributed to the strength of the entire structure, demonstrating that practical experience and accumulated knowledge could produce architecture of remarkable durability long before the development of advanced construction technologies. The two-story arrangement of the interior continues to intrigue archaeologists. While the lower chamber clearly functioned as the primary burial area, the exact purpose of the upper chamber remains uncertain. Some researchers propose that it may have been used during funerary ceremonies before the remains were placed below. Others suggest it served as a storage space for ritual objects or offerings associated with the burial process. Because no written records survive from the Talayotic culture, these interpretations remain based on archaeological evidence rather than direct testimony from the people who built the monument. The distinctive boat-like profile of the Naveta has inspired generations of speculation. Ships have often symbolized journeys between worlds in many cultures, leading some scholars to wonder whether the structure represented a symbolic vessel carrying the dead into the afterlife. However, this interpretation cannot be confirmed with certainty. It is equally possible that the shape developed primarily for structural reasons, providing stability while enclosing a spacious interior. As with many prehistoric monuments, symbolism and practical engineering may have existed side by side, making it difficult to separate one from the other after thousands of years. The wider Talayotic civilization that flourished on Minorca and neighboring Majorca remains one of the most fascinating prehistoric cultures in the Western Mediterranean. Its people constructed impressive stone towers known as talayots, circular ceremonial buildings called taulas, and extensive settlements protected by strong walls. These monuments reveal communities that invested enormous effort in permanent architecture, suggesting a stable society with established traditions, organized labor, and shared religious or ceremonial practices. The Naveta des Tudons represents one chapter within this larger cultural landscape, illustrating how burial customs formed an essential part of community life. Modern archaeological techniques continue to reveal new information about these ancient builders. Scientific analysis of human remains has provided clues about diet, health, and patterns of daily life, while radiocarbon dating has refined the chronology of the monument's use. Geological studies have identified the local origins of the limestone blocks, confirming that builders skillfully exploited nearby natural resources. Meanwhile, digital mapping and three-dimensional scanning allow researchers to document every detail of the structure while minimizing physical disturbance to the fragile archaeological site.